All right, we should be all set. Howdy, howdy, everybody. Welcome, welcome. Hello. Oh, I gotta make sure to join the Discord server properly. Join. Push me down there and then lock it. Gotta open up. We will get to you. Shake Harris before. I'll bring you up in just a moment. Just gotta finish setting up, okay? Okay, we should be good to go. Hope everybody can hear me all right. Hope everybody can... Oh, wait, does it say Kerbal Space Program? No, we're not doing Kerbal Space Program today. That's my bad. One moment. No. We are not doing gaming. How do I turn off the gaming thing? Okay. Oops. My bad. Kerbal Space Program is good, but we're just not doing that today, and I just forgot. All right, let's bring up Shake. Shake, I believe we've spoken before, right?
Hello. Yeah, we have spoken before.
On this topic?
No, not on this topic. I'm not even from the United States.
That's okay.
I just wanted to let you know, I'm very happy that everything's good with your health.
I appreciate
and I wish
that.
you long life. Keep doing what you're doing. I'm just really happy everything's good with you. That's all I wanted to say. Okay.
I appreciate that. Thanks for being here, bud.
Thank you very much. Have a
Take
good
care.
one, man. Yeah.
We got him. Hope everybody's having a good day. Thank you for the 100 bits, Econo. We are, I think we should be able to monetize on Twitch soon. So I don't know if we're able to yet. Oh, actually, I think we can. Wait a minute, why can't I become a... Cool, okay, I think that we're actually in the clear. As far as monetization goes, but we'll work on it. We will work on it. Bits are some kind of money. I don't know what kind of money they are, but they're some kind of money. All right, let's talk to Zogden.
What's up?
Zogden, how's it going?
Yeah, I just want to come up here and say Heil Hitler and gas all cakes. You're
Well, that's
dirty
crazy. That's a crazy thing to say. Like, imagine being that guy and being so obsessed with the Jewish people that, like, you make it your entire personality. Like, it's kind of cringe. Embarrassing, even. Yeah, I have a hard time imagining it. We don't think about you. You're not, you know, we're not of concern for us. No, I don't think he thought it was funny. I think he thought that it would get a rise out of me. But it's just embarrassing for him. What's your Twitch name? It's Blitz PhD. It's the same name everywhere. Apparently, I don't know the dog whistles well enough to have recognized the name. Do I have a Discord server? What a surprise. Indeed I do. Yeah, discord.gg/drblitz. Let's talk to Master. Master, how's it going?
Good, how are you?
I'm doing okay. Master, are you MAGA?
I mean, MAGA. I mean, what, making America great again?
Well, I mean, you and I both know that that's not all MAGA is. MAGA is a political movement at this point.
I wouldn't define myself as being in any political movement, but I do agree with the concept of making America great again.
Okay. Do you mind if
I'm
I
kind
ask
of
you?
curious as to your concept here about anti-science. So how do you
I'll get to
define
that.
science?
So, Master, I'll get to that. Do you mind if I just ask you 3 yes or no questions? It's not like they're not gotchas. I'm just curious what you think, and then we can talk about it. Okay.
Sure.
So first, do you think that climate change is real? And if so, do you think that humans are the main cause?
Well, I think that the Earth generally has had a change in climate. So, like, we had an ice age thousands of years ago. I think that to presume that human beings are the sole cause
I said
of
main cause.
main soul, whatever, is presumptuous at best, and that there
Okay, I'll take
is,
that as a no.
yeah.
Do you think that the vaccines that we typically administer to like young children, like babies and toddlers, do you think that those are generally safe and effective?
I think that it's sort of more complex than just saying that they're safe and effective.
Well, safe meaning that in the vast majority of cases, they won't cause any harm to the infant or the toddler, and effective meaning in the vast majority of cases, they will reduce the severity of disease or reduce or prevent disease entirely. That's what I mean by those 2 things.
I mean, for the most part, in certain cases, but in other cases, no.
So that's why I was asking generally. Do you think that they're generally safe and effective?
Well, see, the thing is that there's so many of them that are administered to young children, and I find
Okay.
that problematic.
So I'll put unsure. Is that fair?
Yeah, I guess.
Okay. And then last one, and then we can get onto the topic. Do you think that humans evolved from non-human ancestors?
If you're asking if I believe in evolution, yeah, I mean,
Human evolution in
is
particular.
self-evident.
Okay.
Evolution is self-evident.
Okay, great. So you were asking what I meant by anti-science. I'm happy to clarify if you still want to go down that route.
Sure.
Yeah, so I mean something very specific. I would say that a political movement is anti-science if it systematically rejects or delegitimizes scientific consensus, especially when it's inconvenient. And 2, it undermines the institutions that produces that scientific knowledge. Would you say that that's like a fair definition?
So how would you define science then?
That wasn't in my definition.
Okay,
I referred
I'm
to
just
scientific consensus and the institutions that produce scientific knowledge.
okay. So are you saying that scientific consensus is science?
No, I just gave you a definition of what I mean by the compound word anti-science.
Okay. So, I mean, I'm asking a secondary question here at this point,
Mhm.
which is that is science the consensus of scientists?
No, scientific consensus is the consensus of scientists.
That's a circular definition. Okay, so the point I'm trying to make here is like science is an approach to discovering knowledge.
That's the
Is it not?
scientific method. Science is a
Right,
very broad category. Science is
Okay.
not the scientific method.
I would say that the scientific method is a wait a minute. So you're saying that the scientific method isn't science?
I would
Did I
say
hear
that
you
the scientific
correctly?
method is a part of science. It's not, the science and the scientific method are not the same thing.
So how would you define science then?
You could define it as a collection of methods, a collection of facts, a collection of systems and tools that we use to increase knowledge about the natural world.
I agree with you about the methods part, right?
But to be clear, we don't need to argue about what the definition of science is. I gave you a definition of what I mean by anti-science. If you don't like that definition, that's fine. But then you're just arguing about semantics rather than arguing about the content.
Well, right, but I mean, if we want to get to the heart of what anti-thing is, then it would be important to understand what your understanding of thing is. Don't you agree?
No, it's not really relevant. I'm using anti-science as a compound word, which has a more sophisticated definition than just against X, right? So that's why I gave you a definition. If you don't like that definition, that's fine, but we can still talk about the meat of what I am accusing MAGA of being, namely that it systematically rejects or delegitimizes scientific consensus, especially when it's convenient, and it undermines the institutions that we use to produce scientific knowledge.
Sure, but isn't scientific consensus a sort of broad concept that doesn't necessarily have, I mean, why does consensus, people had a consensus about smoking cigarettes, right? At a certain point, like to use that as the platform for whether something is legitimate or not, or whether it's quote unquote science or not.
I'm not making a claim about whether or not it's legitimate. Not my claim.
So to be anti-science can be legitimate then?
If you want it to be, you can say that it's legitimate. I'm not making a normative claim. I'm making a claim that the MAGA political movement systematically rejects or delegitimizes scientific consensus, especially when it's inconvenient, and that it undermines the institutions that are used to produce scientific knowledge. Those are the claims.
How is it undermining? How is it undermining the institutions that establish scientific consensus?
Well, it's that produce scientific knowledge. But yeah, sure, I can give you examples if you'd like. Do you know what the National Science Foundation is?
I mean, just by the name of it, sure, yeah.
It provides something like a quarter of all scientific funding in the country. Donald Trump's administration, Donald Trump being the leader of the MAGA political movement, Donald Trump's administration has proposed a budget for 2027 that would cut the budget of the National Science Foundation in half. Also, about a week and a half ago, he fired the entirety of the directing board for the National Science Foundation with no reason given. This seems like an explicit example of undermining the institutions that produce scientific knowledge.
Interesting. Are you familiar with, do you know who Jeffrey Epstein is? I'm just curious. I'm not trying to get into any kind of
Yes, I'm familiar with the name.
Trying to ask. Okay. So you are aware of the fact that he was heavily involved in a lot of these institutions that you're describing, correct?
I have no idea if Epstein was involved at all with the National Science Foundation, but I'd appreciate it if you stayed on topic. If your claim is that Donald Trump is reducing the budget for the NSF by half, or wants to reduce the budget for the NSF by half, and fired the National Science Board with no reason given because of Jeffrey Epstein, I guess you can make that claim if you want, but you'd have to support it with evidence.
Right. Well, I mean, if you're unfamiliar with the topic, then it wouldn't really have much point to it. But I mean, the reality is that there is a lot of interest in science by people who, quite honestly, don't have the best interest of humanity at heart.
That's cool. Would you want to defend the claim that Donald Trump's administration is not undermining the scientific institutions that produce knowledge, or rather the institutions that produce scientific knowledge? Because that's the claim here. You can say that he's doing it for a good reason, but it's still true that he is undermining the institutions that produce scientific knowledge.
Right, but is scientific knowledge dependent solely on institutions to be able to develop?
That's not the claim. Pay attention.
Okay, so
try to track. The claim is that Donald Trump.
Okay, so
the claim is that Donald Trump and his administration are undermining the institutions that we use to produce scientific knowledge. There can be other ways to produce scientific knowledge too, but he is undermining the institutions that we use to produce scientific knowledge.
So why is that a problem?
I'm not making the claim that it's a problem. It's a descriptive claim, not a normative claim.
Okay, so yeah, I would say that's not a problem.
Okay, that's not the question. Do you think it's true that he's doing this, or do you think it's false that he's doing this?
I think it's false because it doesn't have anything to do with the actual discovery of science. Funding has so much
think
less
it's-
to do with the actual development of scientific knowledge.
You should try
than
tracking.
does-
This is not a good look. The claim is that as part of being anti-science, given the definition that I've offered, one of the aspects of being anti-science is that a political movement seeks to undermine the institutions that produce scientific knowledge. Are you now rejecting the claim that Donald Trump's administration is not, or are you rejecting the claim that Donald Trump's administration is trying to undermine the institutions that produce scientific knowledge? Are you saying that he is not undermining those institutions?
Well, I think that the point I'm trying to make is actually that these institutions, if anything, are interfering in and of themselves with the discovery of or production of scientific knowledge.
So
That they
it's
are
your
actually
claim that the institutions
antithetical.
don't actually contribute to the production of scientific knowledge?
I think they get in the way more often than not, yes.
Okay, can you support that?
In what way?
I mean, it's just a claim at this point. Can you provide some sort of evidence or some sort of reasoning that would lead us to that conclusion?
Well, I think that bureaucracy is inherently antithetical to actual progress and discovery. Wouldn't you agree?
That's, no.
So you think bureaucracy is a good for
I think
scientific
bureaucracy,
discovery?
no, that's not what it means to not be antithetical. Not being antithetical does not mean that it is, intrinsically required or intrinsically good. It means that it's not antithetical. I think that bureaucracy generally is going to be neutral. Bureaucracy can be used for good, it can be used for bad.
Well, I'm saying that the current institutions that produce scientific knowledge are doing quite the opposite. They're preventing scientific knowledge more often than not, because more often than not, there is a view or a held belief by institutions which prevent progress in many areas.
How do you think that scientific knowledge is accumulated?
Through the scientific method.
Okay, how do you think that happens, practically speaking?
Well, I think that there are people who have theories or have postulates that then test those theories or postulates in
Okay, and
various
who are
ways.
these people?
Well, more often than not, they are academic students, or they are what you would call scientists.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so how do these academics, these academic types who test these things, who come up with these ideas and test their ideas, how do they come up with these ideas? How do they test these ideas? Practically speaking.
Well, they come up more often than not. People come up with ideas through either some kind of intuitive process, or they have accumulated knowledge that they
I mean,
use.
practically speaking, not not like what's going on internally in their minds, kind of thing.
I mean, I think that that's a pretty important aspect of how people come up with.
I'm aware of
theories.
like what the internal process is. I'm asking practically speaking. I'm trying to Socratically lead you to a reasonable conclusion, but I fear that we
More
might not
often
get
than
there.
not, they do so in a laboratory setting in the
Right.
current day and age.
Right,
Correct.
laboratory setting. Now, how does one acquire a laboratory?
Well, I mean, there has to be someone funding it, right?
Yep. Where does that funding
Right.
come from?
Well, in the current society, a lot of it comes from government.
Right. So, in the current society that we live
or
in,
corporations, obviously. I mean, you do also get a lot of government and
Not so
corporate
much.
sort of funding as well.
it depends on it depends on the subject matter. Like if you're working with pharmaceuticals, then yeah, surely you're going to get lots of corporate investment. But you're not going to see really any corporate investment in like fundamental physics or in plant bio or like plant biology, like some of these more less indirectly profitable fields. You won't see as much corporate investment. But anyway, so you agree that the government in the society that we live in funds a significant chunk of the scientific research. Is that true?
More often than not, but here's the thing though. I don't think that that's right because
The
let's
claim
look
is
at
not
it.
whether or not it's right. You've now
I
shifted the
get that.
goalposts. Your
No,
original
listen,
claim, back up. Your original claim is that actually they are they're hindering scientific process.
Yes,
But you've
government
also just
funding-
agreed that they are the thing enabling laboratories to exist in the first place. So how can they be hindering scientific progress while also being the thing that allows laboratories to exist?
Right. Well, if you allow me to, I will explain
Please.
that. Okay. So governments have an agenda to why they want scientists to work on projects, correct or incorrect?
I think that it's probably neither. I think that I'm sure that some projects have an agenda, others do not.
So, but you can see that there is in certain subjects an agenda behind why there is a scientific inquiry being allowed.
Yeah, like
or that
for
there are
example,
scientific...
in the research and development department of the Department of Defense, yeah, they have an agenda. They want their scientists to figure out how to build more effective bombs.
But of course, it's more broad than just bombs. But yes, so there is an agenda more often
the NSF,
than not.
famously, the NSF stated goals are not that. The NSF stated goals, and I can go read it for you if you want, but it's something like increasing scientific knowledge for the greater good of humanity or something like that.
Sure, but I mean, we can also agree potentially here, I would hope, that government isn't always honest about its
So
objectives
then how would you know
or
what their
goals.
actual agenda is? How are you
Well,
establishing what it is?
you could be, I think that it would require a little bit of discernment, perhaps.
Ah,
but I
discernment,
think-
the magical word that people use when they don't actually have a method that they can use to reliably come to the truth.
Well, I think that if you're a human being with any kind of sensibility other than naivete, that you can use your discernment to make a judgment about whether or not government has your best interest at heart based on its actions.
So NSF isn't government. The people who make decisions at the NSF, at least prior to them all being fired, was the National Science Board. And these are well-respected, top of their field scientists who are appointed by the president, actually. These are not politicians. These are not government officials. They are an advisory board. And these are the people, these scientists are the people that make the decisions about where, grant funding should go.
Sure. So this is not about them making bombs, correct? This is not about making
No, the NSF doesn't
weapons
make
or-
bombs.
Okay. So why would the government be interested in maintaining that institution as far as its funding is concerned?
So the government is made up of people in the United States at least, and in most developed countries in the world, have recognized that funding scientific endeavors, even pure scientific endeavors, generally has a beneficial knock-on effect for society at large. This was established, this was, realized post-World War II. The NSF was founded in 1950 with the goal of promoting the progress of science, both to improve national health, to improve planetary health, to improve prosperity, welfare, etc.
All right. So, but my question still stands: is that so? This institution not being something that is useful to a government which is hell bent on using weapons to harm other countries, right, or to maintain its quote unquote defense, doesn't necessarily have any interest in maintaining this kind of institution, correct?
Governments have more interests than merely doing national defense.
Sure, but I mean, let's look at this country. What are you talking about?
I mean, the NSF was founded in 1950 by an act of Congress. It was not founded in 2026.
No, I don't think you're understanding what I'm saying. This country is about war. It's not about like making a better world for humanity. If it was, we would have a better world for humanity.
I have no idea what makes you think that this is... Sorry, I need to fix something. I have no idea what makes you think that this is like the claim to make, that the United States is merely about war. The United States is 340 million people. Most people
Why
are
do you
not.
think
Most
there's
people are
hold on,
not
why do you
do not
think
care or are not involved with war at all.
right? Why do you think that we have a Federal Reserve in the first place?
Seems irrelevant to the topic in question.
Well, we're talking about funding. We're talking about money, right?
Uh-huh. Talking about
So
scientific
why do we
funding,
have a
indeed.
federal why do we have the kind of money we have? Why do we have a Federal Reserve System?
You'll have to talk to an economist. It's not something that I'm particularly well informed on.
Well, that's very convenient for you to not have any knowledge about the economics of the actual system
No,
you're
I don't
in.
know about the history of the development of the Federal Reserve.
You don't.
No. I'm
Maybe
not an
that's something you
economist.
should look into.
I'm not a
I would
historian.
suggest, I would
It's a-
recommend.
Maybe it is, but it's irrelevant to the topic of conversation.
It isn't irrelevant. It's a convenient.
Unless you care to explain why the historical explanation for why we have a Federal Reserve is relevant, you're kind of in hot water here. So if you want to explain it by all means, and then I can reevaluate my claim that it's not relevant. But
my claim is that
otherwise-
this country is more warlike in its orientation. So the scientific, so propping up scientific inquiry as far as not warlike subjects isn't to its advantage or to its interest.
Okay, I mean, the evidence seems to disagree with that. For example, there have been scientific research grants or scientific projects that have been funded in the United States that have no benefits towards war. So you'd have to explain all of the scientific endeavors that have been funded that don't involve war and aren't related to war under your paradigm. If you can't do that, then it seems like your paradigm is incorrect.
Sure. Well, I mean, obviously, there's going to be funding for various areas that are more of an interest for certain people within government. For instance, the entire scientific endeavor for like prolonging life or
Nope,
erectile
not talking about
dysfunction.
that. Not talking about that either.
Right. So the reality.
I can give you an example. Are you aware of LIGO? Do you know what LIGO is?
I'm assuming that's an acronym for something.
Yeah, it's an observatory that was primarily funded by the National Science Foundation. Over $1.4 billion were invested by the National Science Foundation since 1990. It observes gravitational waves. What's the motivation for that?
Okay, well, yeah, that's great. That's the motivation. I'm sure would be for just like a developing understanding of astrophysics generally, but gravitational waves and things of that sort more specifically.
Yeah, but if it were the case that the only interests for our government were to produce, scientific research for the war machine, it seems like that we wouldn't have an explanation for why this particular project was funded.
Well, I mean, I think that if you can discover the fundamentals of gravitation, you might be able to create aircraft that would be able to use that and be able to fly without propulsion that we usually conventionally use, like rockets.
Okay, so you think that they're funding this project because on the off chance that we discover something that we weren't expected, 1 in a million chance that happens, maybe sometime 150 years later we'll be able to use this to build more advanced rockets?
Well, no, the whole point would be that it wouldn't be a rocket, that it would actually
be more
propelled.
advanced, whatever it is.
Right. Are you familiar with the woman who was unalived, who was a scientist for you? You are aware of this.
Yeah, I just know the trap that you're walking into. Go ahead.
A trap that I'm walking into.
Mm-hmm.
How many
a self-laid
scientists?
trap, by the way.
How many scientists have perished?
Hold on.
On that
Let's
subject
talk about.
recently?
Do you want to talk about the woman or not?
I mean, I think if you already know about it, then you already know about it. I don't really.
She wasn't a scientist. She also wasn't working on anti-gravity.
According to who?
All of the evidence that we have that's available to us.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
That sounds convenient.
Evidence is convenient? I mean,
no. What
evidence
you
is what
take
evidence
as
is.
evidence is convenient. I'm sure.
I've looked into this. I actually made a video about it last week, which is why I know
sure you
quite a
make
lot about Amy
videos about
Eskridge.
things. Yeah. Okay. So the reality is that there is a vested interest. I mean, okay, so you think the government tells the truth all the time or allows the truth to
Nope,
exist?
didn't make that claim.
Well, it sounds like you do. I mean, it's from my perspective, it seems like you are. How old are you, by the way?
I'm
Just
32.
curious. Okay. So, how long has your life been in academia?
I've, I went to college and then I did grad school and now I'm a researcher.
Okay, so how many years were you in
It depends on
college
when you
for?
count. It depends on when you count it as starting.
Cumulatively, let's say.
I did 4 years of undergrad, 2 years for a master's, 5 years for a PhD, and I've been a researcher since 2022.
So, would you say we could say that it's basically the majority of your adult life?
The entirety of my adult life I've spent learning and doing research, yes.
Well,
Because learning, I think, is valuable.
Well, learning is valuable, but
Mm-hmm.
academic environments, just like I was saying earlier about scientific institutions, more often than not, prevent the overall learning. So you have expertise in a specific field, but you have your general knowledge is lacking, is what I'm saying. Because you don't even know the history of our economic system.
Do you have any evidence that supports this idea that somehow institutions of higher learning prevent learning or disadvantage someone's learning?
What I'm saying specifically is that you have what universities have done very well, exceedingly well, is to create experts in fields, but they have failed
Experts
miserably.
in fields are the relevant people that we should be listening to in those fields, right?
But they have failed miserably at creating general intelligence.
It's funny you say that because the original goal of a institution of higher learning, of a university, if you will, was to provide what is called a blanking on the word. Anyway, it was to provide a broad array of knowledge that was very, very useful for the upper echelon, so that they would be well informed on the workings of the world in many different ways. I think it was called a liberal arts liberal arts education.
The traditional quadrivium.
There you go. So what's funny is that since perhaps the 1980s, 1970s, 1980s, that's not really the case anymore. Instead, now universities are pumping out people who have very narrow expertise because that's what people wanted. People wanted they wanted the thing that will get them a job, and that involves expertise rather than broad knowledge, because expertise is not very easily found amongst the large population, and so your skills will be in demand. So arguably, this is the fault of the economic system that we exist in, right?
Well, I think
that universities are the way they are now.
I think you're lacking in a little bit of an understanding about the history of the education and how it actually unfolded.
I'm sure.
Because the classical liberal arts education that you're describing used to be for like elementary age children, and now it's if you get it at all.
No, you're confused.
No,
it does still happen at the elementary and middle school and high school level. If you're going to an academy, the university was intended to give a broad education in the way of the kings of old, right? That they would have a broad education on many things, but that's not the case anymore. At least not as much.
The classical liberal arts education used to be what would be considered trivial, because it was something that children received, not at the age of like 5 or whatever. I'm not saying it's like elementary education, but still it would be something that young people would have learned, and then you would go to college to have expertise.
I don't think that that's ever been the case, no.
Well, it's in more recent times, like in the 1800s. The reality is the classical liberal arts education is something that's more fundamental, that leads, especially the trivium. I'm talking specifically to the trivium here. Grammar, logic, and rhetoric is something that you would have learned.
Yeah, that's not what I'm talking about. That's not the entirety of the the liberal pursuits that were intended to be achieved at universities.
Yes, what you're talking about generally it would be the quadrivium. It's math, geometry, music, astronomy.
No, I'm not talking about that either.
Okay, well, if you're talking about classical liberal arts education, that is literally what it is.
You're missing history. You're missing.
I am not missing history. This is what created the.
Are you referring to like ancient Greek? Are you referring to like the ancient Greek liberal arts or liberal pursuits education? Like, is that what you're referring to? Because that's not how. That's not how the Enlightenment era universities were envisioned.
The classical liberal arts education of the trivium and quadrivium is essentially what created the foundation of what created the
Bro's
Renaissance.
literally referring to Boethius. The trivium and the quadrivium were from 1500 years ago. We're not talking about that, buddy.
Yes, we are.
We're literally not. The universities didn't even exist back then.
Are you using Wikipedia right now? Or
Yeah,
what are
I
you
was
doing?
just googling the quadrivium because I wanted to know what the history of it
Right.
was.
So you don't know anything about it yourself. You're
Well,
using
that's why I'm using an external source, because I recognize
Right.
when I don't have knowledge on an area and when I recognize how to
So
find
you're-
knowledge. That's part of the
so
training that you
you're-
get.
yes,
That's part of a
but
university education.
Unfortunately, the superficiality of what you're using.
So is it
You
true
don't
that the
have an actual
quadrivium is
understanding of
it
the
true that the
topic.
quadrivium these, and by the way, in fact, is it true that the quadrivium originates from the time of Boethius?
Oh, I'm sure it does.
Okay, when did Boethius live?
You were saying 1500 years ago or something.
Yeah,
I don't
around
know
500
specific-
AD.
I know
Yeah.
Aristotle. I know Aristotle originated the trivium, and I know that the quadrivium is essentially an outcropping of
No,
the medieval.
to be
and
clear,
the,
the trivium came about in the 9th century, or after the 9th century anyway.
okay, you're glib. You don't know what the actual history of it is, so you're arguing something that is based off of a Wikipedia page at best.
Okay, so
Okay.
okay, do you have a source for the claim that the trivium originates from Aristotle?
I'm not able to access any external sources like you are right now. I'm not in front of a computer.
Okay, well,
The
I can
fact of the
access it
matter is
for you
I've-
if you
I've
want to
done
tell
my
me to look
research
up.
on this.
If
I've
you
done
want to tell me
I've done
what
a
to
thorough
look
amount
up,
of
I
research
can.
on this. Okay, have you ever read the Trivium by Sister Mary Josephs, or
No, I have
have you
no
read
idea
any
who that
books
is.
on the subject?
I have no idea who that is, no.
Have you read any books on the subject?
On the subject of the history of university educations, no.
No, on the history of specifically the Trivium and Quadrivium.
No, it's not something that I'm particularly interested
Okay,
in.
so
it's also not
I-
particularly on topic, but that's okay. We can go down this road.
Well, what we're talking about here, first and foremost, is that the institutions, okay, the institutions of learning,
Mhm.
right? When this country's institutions of learning were established in the 1920s, it was done at the behest of who? Who was the main? Who was the
I knew
main
it. I knew we were
person?
going back there. I knew it.
What?
We were going back to what? Is it the Rothschilds, or is it the who's the other rich guy? The what's his name? The other guy that people like to mention. Is the it's the Rothschilds and the families. Help me out here. You would know. Rockefellers. The Rockefellers and the Rothschilds. It's one of those, right?
Okay, what does that have to? Yes,
That's what you're bringing up? Yeah, it always goes back to them. How does this explain the institutions of higher learning that exist in, say, other parts of the world?
You said it
where
yourself. You said
this
it
is
yourself.
not an American phenomenon where the Rockefellers...
that it is
the Rothschilds, the
oriented. It's
Rockefellers.
oriented towards an economic goal. Correct. The current state
in the
of our
United States?
education.
Oh, that's like a more recent thing than the the 1920s.
No, it isn't. The reality
Okay.
is that, well, first and foremost, it is a ongoing development, of course, but the reality is that the orientation of our education is more economically driven than it is towards
Source.
actual understanding.
Source.
Okay, well, I mean, you can literally, there's the quotation of, I want a nation of workers, not thinkers. That's a paraphrase, but essentially that is a quotation by Rockefeller himself as
Okay,
the
let's go find
education
let's
was
go find
being
the quote.
founded. I want a nation of workers, not a nation of philosophers or men of thinking.
It's why. So the quote, "I don't want a nation of thinkers. I want a nation of workers," is widely attributed to. So I'm using an AI overview. We can go look at the sources. I'm just summarizing here. Often cited in discussions about industrial era schooling, aiming to create compliant labor rather than creative thinking. While heavily associated with the 1902 creation of the General Board of Education, this quote is considered a misattribution by some, with roots potentially in a similar 1849 sentiment or later conspiracy literature. So do we have like an original source for the quote actually being tied to the 1902 creation of the General Education Board, or no?
I'm sure there are. Also, artificial intelligence
How sure
is
are
not
you?
exactly going to be
I know that's why I'm
source for
that's
this
why
shit.
I'm aware. That's why I told you I was using the AI overview and that we could go look at the sources afterwards. So I'm asking you.
You used Google earlier. Why don't you just go ahead and use Google?
Google. the AI overview provided by Google is it's a first line of defense that you can look at, and then it will provide you with sources, and we can go look at those sources, which is what we can do right now.
Go ahead and look at those sources. Then you have that in front of you, don't you?
Yeah, so we can pull them up. I mean, so you made the claim, which is why I was asking you. So
Yes, and it is literally the quote.
Well, that's the question, right? That's the thing in contention. So one source is from LinkedIn, another is from Reddit, another is from Quora, another is from Instagram, Facebook, SpartanShield.org, which I have no idea what that is. A blog called An Injustice, a Medium post, Facebook again. So it looks like that there aren't actually particularly good sources, at least provided by the AI overview. We can look into this for the 1902 attribution from Rockefeller about this nation of thinkers versus nation of workers thing. So it's not clear to me that this is actually something related to the development of the General Education Board.
That's all well and good, but the reality is not only is it an accurate
source,
quote,
are you?
Not only is it an accurate quote, but there's another person within.
Wait a minute, hold on. It's not an accurate quote. At least you haven't provided any reason to think that it is.
Well, according to you.
Okay, so is this just vibe based? Apparently, I know more about this than you do, and I've Googled it for 2 seconds.
No, according to you, who has no fucking expertise in this subject.
Here, why don't we look? Well, apparently neither do you. Let's look, okay? So this is Snopes. Did John D. Rockefeller say, "I don't want a nation of thinkers, I want a nation of workers"? God, I hate this. Unproven. A quote attributed to John D. Rockefeller, patriarch of the Rockefeller political dynasty and former richest man on earth, is often used as an example of how the elites view the public education. Blah, 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 blah. Rockefeller donated blah, 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 blah. He also created the General Education Board. This is known. Which was a charity, right? The General Education Board has faced persistent allegations that it unfairly punished poor and minority students towards vocational schooling, blah, yeah, all reasonable. The alleged quote about wanting workers, not thinkers, broadly fits within that characterization of the GEB. There is, however, no evidence Rockefeller or anybody else associated with the GEB said it. The earliest reference to the quote, as far as Snopes can identify, stems from a 2006 documentary, One Nation Under Siege, whose experts include a wide variety of conspiracy theorists, including the now famous anti-vaccine activist Sherry Tenpenny, I'm sorry. So, no, this is not a legitimate quote, apparently.
According to Snopes, which is like,
okay, do you have anything better? Do you have anything
Dude,
better?
You're using fucking Snopes, bro.
Oh, okay. Oh, you're using AI. You're using what do you want me to use? Can you provide me a source?
I don't have anything in front of me, dude.
Okay.
I'm sure I can pop it up.
Then we just don't have any reason to trust you on this.
The reality is, like, the fact that you don't. Okay, first and foremost, your naivete is such that you believe that the people who have created the education and have oriented it clearly, as you said earlier, towards an economic goal.
Yes, this is a shift that happened in the 70s and 80s.
The irony here is palpable, which is the fact that you already have made it clear that that's the orientation of our education is towards an
originating in the 70s
driver.
and 80s.
It's oriented towards an economic
you can't hear me.
driver.
I mean, you can hear me, but you're choosing to ignore me. That's fine.
It's something that was that you're saying. Yeah, your claim is that it's something that was done in the 70s.
Well, I mean, probably more accurately, the 80s. This is when we saw a huge spike in increase in the cost of university educations, and it's also closely that huge increase in cost was then closely tied with the desire to make sure that you have a high-paying job after you finish your university education.
Okay, well, I mean, so would you, the funny thing is here, right? So the education that we've had for over 100 years, if we look at it rationally, has been in and of itself engineered so that people are, let's say, more functional in an economic setting, in factories, and then from factories to more, from factory work, in the early part of the 19th century to being more oriented towards, let's say, expertise in specific fields in the 80s and 90s. But the orientation has always been the same.
No.
The orientation of the education has always been the same, which is an economic driver.
Prove it.
As opposed to a enlightenment sort of institution of enlightenment or understanding, general knowledge and actual capacity for learning and understanding.
Prove it.
Prove what?
The claim that you just made. Because all it was a claim.
That
It was
the
a mere
orientation
assertion.
of our
You
education
provided
has
no
been
evidence for
towards-
the case.
Okay, so why is there a dinging bell, for instance, in the classrooms?
Because bells are a good way of getting people's attention.
Okay, so it's
Obviously.
not to it's not to condition children to be
That's a cool
more
conspiracy theory.
Oh, it's a conspiracy. It's like that's a convenient term to describe anything that you disagree with. I appreciate that.
Well, do you have
but that's a
any
convenient
evidence
phrase.
that this this dinging bell in a school classroom was somehow conspiratorially added to condition people?
Why does there have to be a conspiracy?
Because clearly people wouldn't be interested in this thing being actually the case, so it would have had to be added in secret.
Why not?
Would have had to be implemented in secret.
Why
Well,
would
if
it have
if
to
it
be
was public, then you should have no problem finding the evidence that this was the reason that a dinging bell was added between school, whatever they're called, classes.
Well, I think that you're right, though. I think that if people
Okay, so
knew,
it is a conspiracy.
Well, I think that there, to a certain extent, what you're describing is accurate. That you're right.
Right, a
If
conspiracy.
people knew-
You
if
think I'm
people
describing a
actually
conspiracy.
knew- See, this is the irony here, is that you're saying that because it's a conspiracy theory, or because it's a conspiracy, it can't be true.
Nope, I didn't say that. But you would have to provide evidence that it is true in order for the conspiracy to be validated.
Sure. So it is insofar. Okay, so the education is oriented towards an economic goal.
That's
correct?
the claim. The claim.
You said
the
it
claim
yourself.
Is being,
Okay, so wait a minute. So are you
Master,
saying that
maybe
your
I
claim is
understand you're not
incorrect?
tracking. I understand you're not tracking. I'm suggesting that shift towards an economic driver for higher education happened sometime between the 70s and 80s, perhaps the early 80s would be the correct around the correct decade. You're making the claim that this was the original plan going back over a century.
Okay, and are you familiar
So that's a claim
with
that you
where?
have to. That's a claim that you have to substantiate.
Do you know what the origin of our modern school system was?
I mean, it depends on how you're defining the modern school system. So the first public high school was in Boston, and this was in the 1800s.
Okay.
Now
you know
our
where that
universities,
model-
our first universities,
Do you
are
know where
far,
the
far
Boston?
younger.
Okay.
Or,
do you
sorry,
know
are
where
far,
the
far
where
older,
the
and
model?
those are modeled off of European universities.
Do you know where the model for that Boston school came from in the first
Boston
place?
School. I don't know if it even had a model. We can look into it together if
It
you
did.
want.
It was called the Prussian Schule. Okay.
Hold on, let's just double check this. So, Boston first public high school. Of course, we're talking about public high schools,
just
right?
look up Prussian Schule and then Boston because it's
The
fun.
English high school. So it's called the English High School Boston. Sorry, the English High School was one of the first public high schools in the United States. It was founded in 1821. It was originally called the English Classical School. I guess it was renamed upon its first relocation in 1824. So. What's the claim? Is the claim that this school was based off of the
Look up instead Prussian Schule, SCHU. Well, it's like an umlaut, ULE.
Okay, and this is somehow tied to the Boston. The Boston.
I'm not sure if it is
high school?
technically to that specific high school, but I know that the public school system originated from the Prussian Schule model.
Okay, that's cool, but we're talking about universities.
Well, we're talking about the education system more broadly, because the reality is that, of course, in order to get into the university, you have to first pass through the elementary and high school education.
I mean, that's not really the case.
The K through 12, the K through 12.
That wasn't really the
pipeline,
case. That's not really how that worked.
Okay, so you can just go into the
There
university.
literally wasn't a K through 12 pipeline when the first universities were formed in the United States.
No, I get that.
Okay, so then it's just not the case that the universities were originally formed to require this K through 12 pipeline. It's just not true.
That's not my claim.
Okay, so what is your claim? Your claim is that somehow the Prussian Schule was the foundation or the backbone for the American high school system, and
For the
the
more
Prussian
modern
Schule
education-
is
for the
probably
modern
going to be.
education that
It's
we
probably
receive
an even deeper conspiracy that we're going to go down there. Which
The-
is
the
fine, I
the-
guess. The original
the Pruss-
claim,
the model of
the original
school-
claim, the original claim here, and we should really wind back because we're going very, very deep down a rabbit hole that's kind of not really relevant. The original claim that you were making is that universities are not good at producing well-informed people. And I'm even willing to grant that today. 100 years ago, it would have been very different. But today, that's probably even true because we don't require as broad of an education as we used to. You know, you don't require as many gen eds, etc. Now, the reason why you made this claim was because, you know, I guess you wanted to take a shot at me or something like this because, you know, I don't know everything about economics because I'm an expert in my field, which isn't economics. And we got there because you were trying to figure out why it is that, or you were asking me about why we have a Federal Reserve. And I didn't know that because, again, not an economist, not a historian. This is not something that I particularly care about, the historical reason behind the Federal Reserve. And the reason why you were proposing this is because you were trying to explain, you were trying to tie this back into why we provide funding for things like LIGO in the first place. So,
yeah, it's more
from a
so the
national
fact
level,
that
right?
my position is that our country is oriented towards war, and that the primary focus of our government in particular, and specifically in regards to the presidency and things of that sort, is towards war, is towards
That would be great
militarization.
if that. So look, this is a paradigm that you have for explaining the way the country is, and if that paradigm
It's
were
the
correct, you would need
military-industrial
to be.
complex, dude.
If that
I mean,
paradigm were
you can't
correct,
make this shit up. Are you saying that the
that
military-industrial
paradigm
complex is
were
a conspiracy
correct,
theory?
if that paradigm were correct, if that accounted for all of the spending priorities of the United States, then it should be able to account for things like LIGO and the Tevatron. But it can't account for any of those.
So exceptions to the rule disprove the rule somehow?
Literally, yes, they do.
That's hilarious. Because
If your
the reality
paradigm
is, like,
is that
so what
we
you're
only
choosing
fund
to
things,
ignore, what you're
if
choosing to
your
ignore
paradigm
here
is that
the
we only fund things that have
military-industrial
military
complex.
interest, if your paradigm is that we only fund things with military interest, then if
That's
I
not
can give you
that's
examples
not
of
my
things,
claim. I'm saying the
okay.
primary focus of our government is military.
That's
so
if by primary you mean more than 50%, that's plausible. But there's a whole 49% perhaps worth of other interests that the government has and uses its funds to fund.
right,
Uses
and
its
it's
money to
within
fund.
its own it's within its own carte blanche to choose which of these things it funds and how much
Yeah.
it does. Right.
Yeah, and
so
so
if it chooses
the
not to
Congress has
if it chooses
produced
not
the
to
National Science
fund
Foundation from the
research into
1950.
whether or not lobsters have sexual genders, then it's within its purview to reduce funding to whatever these various
Wow,
scientific
we're really like
pursuits happen
flipping
to
all
be.
over the place. Yeah, so the National Science Foundation was formed in 1950 and it was governed by a board of advisors. These are the people who make decisions about where the funding goes. This board of advisors historically have been scientists and, you know, top tier academics and, you know, people that are in charge of research organizations and so on. So these are not, I mean, in some sense they're government officials, right? But these are not politicians. These are not people that have known affiliations necessarily with like the military industrial complex. These are scientists. So why do you think that we should not be appealing to the most well-respected scientists in the country to decide our scientific priorities when it comes to allocating funds for research?
You're misunderstanding. I'm not saying that I agree with our government. Holy shit. I do
Cool.
not agree with militarization or the
I'm
military
not making the
industrial
claim
complex.
that you agree with it.
Okay, I'm just saying because I want to be clear here because I think that there's room for misunderstanding.
No,
I
you
don't
just think that it's a
agree-
good thing to dismantle government funding of scientific endeavors, even ones that are unrelated to the military.
I'm not saying that either. I'm saying that is
You
the
did say it.
orientation. No, I did not. I'm saying that it is. I am
Okay,
saying,
hold on. We might have to rewind the debate back, but I have the recording. You want to go listen to the recording?
Not right now. I don't think it's relevant.
Okay.
Do you?
So,
is that-
okay, I mean, it's fine as long as you agree that it is not a bad thing for the government to be funding non-military.
No, I think that's
Non-military
that
scientific
should
endeavors.
That should be the purpose of any
Yeah, and so
reasonable government or civilization.
Now,
I
you
agree
did say
that it
earlier
should be.
that government institutions are hindering scientific progress. Is that still your claim?
that is still my claim based on the fact that yes, our government is oriented towards the military industrial complex pipeline fundamentally.
Those two things are not contradictory.
What I'm saying is that the fact that it is inclines it towards the reduction of general science discovery and more towards militarization. Would you disagree with that?
Historically, that's not what the NSF has done.
I'm not saying historically. I'm saying
I mean, like, historically, prior to, like, Donald Trump's first term.
Okay, great.
So, like, it's just not the case that, like, it is not a fact of our country that the United States' orientation towards war is hindering or perhaps redirecting the scientific funding that we, or the funding that we should be directing at genuine scientific endeavors, and instead is only directing them towards military investigations or whatever. This is just not the case historically. It's not the case historically, even only going back, you know, a little bit more than 10 years. So to say that the NSF in particular has been hindering scientific development is strictly false.
I'm not saying that the NSF is. I'm saying that our government
That was the
does.
institution. That was the institution in question. That was the entire framing of the conversation.
Right, but what you're also saying is that our government currently has the ability, first and foremost, to restrict funding to it.
It does have the ability, yeah. That
And
is,
it is
within the purview of
responsible for
Congress and
funding.
the president. Yes.
Right. So the money
what-
comes
yeah.
from the government to the
Yep.
NSF, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Right. So the government has control over that discovery.
Yeah, and by undermining that institution, by cutting its funding, by firing the entirety of the governing board, that is undermining our institutions that produce scientific knowledge.
Right. So you're saying that the NSF has, like, what, Star Trek like?
The NSF is a funding organization. They're not a research organization themselves.
Okay, so exactly. So the whole point is that the funding is oriented around the viability of these various scientific subjects or pursuits for a purpose. They're not just, more often than not, they're not going to be doing this just for, like, shits and giggles, right? They're doing scientific pursuits.
Scientific investigation has value on its own. It doesn't require military investment. It doesn't require
not
military interest.
necessarily, but
Doesn't
certainly
require
I think that the goal, I think that the
really any of
general
that.
goal in most of these kind of areas is going to be to produce something, correct? Something
No,
of value.
you're thinking of, well, I mean, yes, scientific knowledge is of value.
Right, but I mean, the scientific knowledge more often than not will lead to some kind of, I don't know, cure to something or some way for us
No,
to
not
produce
necessarily.
something. There's
No,
got to be.
you're confusing science for engineering.
No, but I mean, with scientific knowledge comes down the road some kind of engineering that will produce some kind of,
That is not
I
the
don't
goal
know,
of the
widget
NSF.
or something that can be profitable.
Right, so
Otherwise,
the goal
why
of
would
the
it
NSF
be?
Yeah, so the NSF was established in 1950, and this is from their own website. It was established in 1950 by Congress to 1. Promote the progress of science, 2. Advance the national health, prosperity, and welfare, and 3. Secure the national defense.
Right. Okay. So those two extra points are essentially what I'm getting at here.
Promoting the progress of science, advancing national health, prosperity, and welfare, those ones, or securing the national
Health,
defense?
prosperity, and welfare, and then
Yeah.
also national defense.
Yeah, and promoting the progress of science, that's the first priority.
Sure, but I mean, the other two come out of the first.
Sometimes. But
So,
that's
I mean,
not what's
that's-
required when you're submitting an NSF grant. You don't have to say, well, if this science is successful, we'll have this widget. Not required.
Well, it's not required.
It's not.
but I
It's not
think that
part of
generally
the.
Speaking,
It's not part of the program.
I get that, but generally speaking, that's why people are going to be interested in these kinds of pursuits.
That's why.
Or
That's why uncurious people might be interested. Sure.
I mean, dude, who do you think the capitalists are? What the fuck?
So to be clear,
They're not curious. They just want
the
to get
people.
money, bro.
The people that we're referring to that make these decisions are these kind of premier scientists. Right.
So the scientists were the ones funding
The scientists are the
science?
ones. The scientists are the one who makes the decisions about which projects get funding.
So it was like a council of scientists that
Yes,
are
it was called the
determining-
National Science Board. Yeah,
Okay.
and then Donald Trump fired them all like a week and a half ago.
Okay.
undermining an important scientific institution that produces scientific knowledge, or rather enables the production of scientific knowledge, I should say.
Are you
Hence anti-science.
sure? Did they give not you, but did they give any reasons as to
No
the
reason was given.
no reason was given?
Yep, they were given a very short email saying your position is terminated effective immediately.
Interesting. And they did the same thing to the if I'm not mistaken, the health board, right?
I don't know. Was this recent?
Relatively. I mean, it was basically the entire thing around the National Health Institute, I think, or something to that effect. They basically fired the entire board.
So this was
Or
June
replaced it.
2025. RFK fired all 17 members of the CDC's Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices.
Yeah.
Yeah, yep. So that's another example of undermining an institution that produces scientific knowledge.
Right, but here's the thing. I mean,
Sounds
you could
anti-science to me.
You could also describe a lot of these decision-making boards as essentially bureaucracy, or even worse, a kind of how to put it, man. I mean, the realities of this is that some of these people are entrenched, have connections to a lot of these corporations like Pfizer and others. Hold on, you're muted or something, bro.
God damn it. Is this just like vibe leftism? Because like there's no evidence to support any of that. The National Science Board gets changed out, or they have 6-year terms, and very occasionally someone will get an additional term on top of their first 6-year term. But they're rotated out every 2 years. You have 24-person board. 8 of them are up for reappointment or they get replaced every 2 years. So this is it's just not the case that these are like entrenched. These are like people who are like presidents of universities or head of like some laboratory or emeritus professor of astrophysics. Like these are not entrenched Pfizer, pharmaceutical, MIC, whatever. Like this is just not true.
Okay, well, either way, I mean, the reality of it is that a lot of these decisions that were made specifically in recent times were, I think, at the very best, especially during the whole pandemic or whatever, were essentially tyrannical in various ways, or at the very least.
What does this have to do with the firing of the NSB and the reduction of funding for the National Science Foundation by 53%? What does it have to do with it?
Well,
at all?
I don't really have any. Like I don't know specifically about this board that you were referring to. The
I'm
NSF.
happy to tell you about it if you have questions.
Sure, and here's the thing. like we're both affected by all of this. Okay, so
Yep.
and here's the thing. And here's the other thing.
I'm less affected
matter
than
how
like my
much I may
colleagues are, but
disagree,
yes.
No matter how much I may disagree or feel like you have a certain air of like, I don't know, you have overconfidence in your knowledge but a lack in certain areas that are very fundamental and important. So
It's
that
interesting you
comes
say
off to
that
me.
because this whole
No,
time
listen, I'm not
I've been happy.
I'm not trying to hurt your feelings, man. I just want to.
You're not hurting my feelings. I'm just pointing out the irony of the statement you're making. The entire time when you've asked me something, if I don't know it, I tell you I don't know it, and then I just go look it up.
Right. But
However,
but
when I've pushed you on claims that you've made, you haven't been able to back them up whatsoever. So it seems like you're very confident in beliefs that you have. Sounds like you're very confident in beliefs that you have, but have no expertise yourself and have no evidence
no, it's
either.
not beliefs that I have. A lot of this is stuff that I've actually done the research on,
like the quote by Rockefeller
years ago, and if not, so the reality is like, and again, I'm trying to be like, the reality is that for somebody who doesn't know the history of the education or the economics, you seem to have like a very sort of naivete going on with regards to how this government is oriented. And I'm not trying to be insulting. I'm just trying to be matter of fact here. And if you think
it seems like you
naive,
don't know how our government is oriented today, though. Like you just don't know you don't even know what the National Science Foundation is.
Okay, but
you have to guess
like,
what it meant based off of its name.
How many institutions does this government have?
The National Science Foundation is one of the largest. It's akin to like
Okay,
NASA.
that doesn't answer my question. How many foundations and how many institutions have been developed over
there's
this
like
time in this
there's
country?
like a dozen, maybe 24 kind of non-agency foundations and institutions
Right. The point
that
is
are
that
directly
there's
controlled by the federal government. Of course, there's a whole bunch of like
right, and that's just
sub stuff,
foundations. But there's also departments, and there's
there's
also
like a dozen of those.
There are a preponderance of different agencies, different, you know, you can laugh all you want, but the reality is that there are a lot of different, you know, entities within the entity of our government, and there are also many non-governmental agencies and
Mhm.
departments and things of that sort. So trying to say that because I don't know about or have expertise in this specific one, which you have an extensive experience with because you are heavily entrenched in that sort of echelon or what have you, is not evidence of my naivete. The reality is I know the orientation of our government probably better, if not far better than you, on account of the fact that, for one thing, I haven't been in academia my whole life. So I have
So
actually
that means that you
lived in
definitely
the world. So how many
apparently academics don't live in the world. Got it.
No, I mean actually experiencing the real world as opposed to the academic
Have you worked in
sort of
DC?
soft pillow. What?
Have you worked in DC?
Actually, I went there the other day. Worked there? No, I don't work.
Okay,
in
I've been to
DC.
I was born in DC. I've been to DC plenty. I'm talking about working there.
Okay.
What jobs have you held, or what job do you have, Master? If you don't mind me asking.
I'll answer what jobs have I held? Okay, I've
sure,
been
go
an
ahead.
electrician.
Mm-hmm.
I've been a pest control technician.
Mm-hmm.
I have been a factory technician.
Mm-hmm.
I have been a car salesman. I have been a chef. I've making pizzas. I have been gosh, how many other jobs have I had? I've had quite a few different
Well, let's
jobs
take a look at those. None of
over the
those
years.
none of those would inform your understanding of how the government actually is any more than being an academic scientist would. Because none of those give you any secret insight into how the nation actually operates.
Okay, so but what I do as a job doesn't define my literacy or my competence insofar as being able to look as far. Yes, but unfortunately, you don't know where the.
It actually indicates I'm more literate than average.
Well, no, I yeah, but your IQ probably isn't in the 99th percentile.
I have bad news for you.
Even if you have 160 IQ, you're still lower than me.
I have bad news for you. Anyway, the point is that you said that me being up in my ivory tower, paraphrasing of course, me being up in my ivory tower, academic, researcher, lifestyle, soft pillow cushion, all of these things means that I've been insulated from the way the actual world works. And so, you know, I don't know how the orientation of our government, I don't know what the orientation of our government actually is. And so what you were suggesting is that because I have a certain occupation, it follows that I wouldn't know about the way the government operates, or the way that the government functions, or what its motivations are. Now, when I questioned you about what your occupations have been, none of your occupations have been the kind of occupation that would give you additional insight into that. Maybe if you were a policy advisor, maybe if you were a staffer of some kind, then sure, you might know more about how the government operates, but you weren't any of those things. Instead, you just appealed to your literacy, your ability to read and understand and process. And so that has nothing to do with your occupation. So accusing me of not being familiar with the way the government works and its orientations and its motivations because of my occupation is hypocritical if your same understanding of, you know, these features about our government don't come from anything to do with your occupation.
Okay, so wait a minute, is student an occupation?
For some people.
So I mean, like I don't think that's an actual occupation. I think that's more
it's
like
not a job, it's an occupation. An occupation is broader than a job.
It's how you occupy.
I'm not
your
a student,
time,
by the way.
That's more semantics. Like it's not a conventional occupation. It's how you occupy your time, how you have occupied your time, but that is not an occupation proper.
I mean, then you're just not using you're just not using the word occupation in the way that it's defined. Words have meanings, and if you want to use a word in a way that isn't what it means, then by all means, I guess. The point is that in occupation, or people have.
So what is your job?
So I'm a researcher and a science communicator.
So a researcher and a science
I'm
communicator.
a physicist.
So you basically work on what?
So I publish
social
scientific
media?
articles. I publish scientific articles, and I produce scientific education.
For TikTok, or
Yeah, that's where some of my science education goes.
so that's how you make money.
Some of it.
What is the other sum?
I get paid for my research.
Okay, so you work in a lab then, I would assume?
No, I'm a
correct?
theorist, so I can work from home. So my work is on my computer
Right, so who's paying you then?
and my notebook. Well, I'm not going to disclose who's paying me.
Okay, fair enough.
I have
But,
private, I have private, patrons who support my research.
okay. So, I mean, it's kind of odd, don't you?
Yeah, it's a little bit of an odd scenario we're in, but it is my scenario.
Okay. So, I mean, this doesn't give you, okay, so you do have a lot of time on your hand, you'd say, correct?
No, I'm very busy.
Very busy with
Mm-hmm.
with what?
With producing scientific education content, producing novel scientific research, writing. Like, I'm very busy. I
Okay.
actually probably work. I probably work more than 60 hours a week.
Doing this.
All of the stuff I just indicated, yeah.
I mean, to be fair, you do this a lot too, wouldn't you say?
I do this for 9 hours a week.
This specifically, debating people online.
Yes, 9 hours a week.
So with that 9 hours a week, wouldn't you say that you could potentially be using your mind to, I don't know, like doing other like knowledge type pursuits, not specifically science, maybe?
I care more about doing science than I care about reading about
Right.
conspiracies about the Rockefellers. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. So, the irony here is that, I think that
You have a lot of time on your hands, though, right?
what?
You have a lot of time on your hands, right? Couldn't you be reading about like policy regarding scientific investment
so
rather
you're
than
asking about jobs,
doing
but
this?
if you want to get into what I actually do, right? I'm a cybernetic systems architect.
Okay, cool.
Okay.
Do you have a lot of
So
time
what
on your
I've
hands?
done
It sounds
is
like you
I've
have a lot of time on your
so
hands.
what I've done is I've actually created a civilizational operating system
Mm-hmm.
that's oriented around education, economics, and ethics.
And who pays for that?
What do you mean pays for what?
Well, your job, right? Not your occupation.
Well, much like you, I have patrons
Okay,
who I do not really have any interest in disclosing.
that's fine.
But I've also
Okay, so you have a
but
lot
I
of time on your hands
gone
too, then,
to-
right?
But this past week actually I've gone to DC to hand over to various senators
Mm-hmm.
a pilot program proposal for developing these ideas into actual programs that can be executed by the government.
Okay.
Okay.
And so then this should be public, right?
Well, I do have a Substack that has my manifesto, but as far as the pilot program itself is concerned, I'm not sure if me handing over a piece of paper is going to be quote unquote public. I'm not sure what you mean by that.
Well, I mean, if you're providing a proposal for the government, that's the kind of thing that government proposals for government projects tend to be public. Also, and this is just a word of advice for everybody who's listening, including Master, never call what you're writing a manifesto. It makes you seem like a crazy person.
Why?
It's just the word is not affiliated with, it's not associated with people who do normal things.
I'm not a
Manifestos are
normal
often
person, certainly, but that doesn't mean. Okay, so being normal means that you're good.
Oh, you're gonna. Nope, I didn't make that claim. You're gonna really latch onto that word normal. Look, when people have manifestos, when we hear about manifestos, typically it's either the Communist Manifesto or it's a school shooter.
I would say,
wanna be
so is there
associated
something
with
wrong with
those
the
groups?
Communist Manifesto for some reason?
Nope.
Okay,
Those
so
are the only
why?
two contexts that manifestos ever show up. And honestly,
Okay,
in
and so
today's
we're
media
appealing
environment, they show
to-
up in like school shooters.
Right. So we're appealing to the mental disability of our country, that the only thing that we can latch onto, as you said, the word
Yeah, I'm
latching.
telling you, it looks bad if you call
Okay,
what
great.
you're writing a manifesto. I was giving you advice.
Okay, great. Yeah. So anyway,
Anyway, see,
my
it seems like that you don't-
manifesto is about saving this country and really
I'm
the
sure it
world
is.
from the monstrosity that is currently cropped up, which is
I'm sure.
not just MAGA, but just about everything else, right? I mean, the realities of our
So I'm
current
glad that we agree.
paradigm.
So wait, do we agree that the Trump administration is hindering scientific investigation by cutting funding to the NSF and by firing the NSB? Do we agree on that?
I don't think that it necessarily is hindering anything, though. Why is an institution solely responsible for scientific
It's not.
inquiry and discovery?
It's not. It's about a quarter of it.
And if anything, why aren't the universities funding?
Universities get
kinds
their
of
funding from the
pursuits?
NSF largely.
What?
Universities get their funding from the NSF, at least for a lot of their big projects.
Well, okay, but why is that the case? Why are we using why do the universities end up being dependent on government
Universities are public
institutions?
institutions.
Sorry, what?
Universities are public. They're public
Right, but
organizations.
okay, so how
you
much
asking why they're not
funding do they get
privately
for
funded?
football?
Oh, so much, and I could rant for days about how
Yes,
much funding
okay,
goes
so-
towards
so
the
we can- so what the fuck
sports
is it?
stuff.
Okay, so
But
yeah, so we agree
that's
on this.
irrelevant. That's irrelevant for the fact that the NSF does provide a large chunk of about a quarter of all public scientific funding, or of all scientific funding in the country. I'm sorry. And so by defunding them, by firing the NSB, you are undermining their ability to do that. Yes or no?
Right, but why does it need to be coming from
I'm
that?
not saying it needs to be, but that's where it is.
Okay, but that shouldn't be the case, in my opinion.
Okay, you can make shoulda, coulda, wouldas about the future. That's not how it is now. By cutting
Well,
funding
no, it
to
is
the
how
NSF,
it is now. It's going
no,
to
it's
have
not.
to be how it is now, isn't
By
it?
cutting
If they're
funding
cutting
to the
funding to the
NSF.
NSF,
No, it just means that we'll produce less science. That's what'll inevitably happen.
or people, if people give a shit, generally, if the public does, then they will put money into these universities for more funding that the NSF was previously supplementing. Correct?
It won't happen if that's what you're asking.
Okay, well, that's a claim.
And
Is there any
by the
evidence?
way,
Do you have
yeah,
any
so-
evidence for
so-
that?
So actually, yes, we do have evidence that the proposed cuts to the NSF have hindered our ability to conduct science.
No. I'm saying well, your claim was
Yes,
that people
it won't happen. Yes. No, the claim is that okay. So that is
Do
a
you
claim.
have evidence to support that claim?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to rely on inductive experience that people tend to not like to give away
Oh,
money
okay,
for
inductive
things that they don't care
experience.
about.
Okay,
No inductive
okay.
evidence.
So that is enough
But
for
look,
evidence, according to you.
Sure. So if you don't agree, then that's fine. We can have that conversation. But the relevant point that there is
No, I
evidence
just find
for
it
is
to be
that
hypocritical because
the relevant
reality
point that we
of-
do have evidence for is that the proposed cuts for the NSF have directly reduced the amount of scientists that have been interested in working in the United States.
Oh, well, dude, I'm sure that Trump being president had nothing to do with that.
I mean, we have Americans who were American scientists have increased the number of applications to foreign countries as a result of the NSF funding cuts, or the proposed NSF funding cuts, and the grants that were cut illegally.
So you think that those are that the scientists leaving the country?
Scientists didn't leave the country under Bush. They didn't leave the country under Trump 1. They left the country under Trump 2 because he cut the funding.
Were they all from the United States, or were they people who were?
So the
let's
data that
say-
we have is that American scientists increased the
scientists,
number American scientists increased the number of applications that they did for other jobs in other countries, for other scientific jobs in other countries, and foreign scientists reduced the number of jobs, or reduced the number of applications that they sent to American universities and research laboratories. As and this happened very, very short. Like this data was taken shortly after the NSF funding cuts were proposed and after the grants were cut.
Interesting. Was there any like previous like not preparation, but basically was there any forthcoming knowledge that this was going to take place, or just happened suddenly?
It happened pretty suddenly last year. So last year, Trump's administration also proposed a funding cut of about the same magnitude, which Congress eventually ended up pushing back against. But as a result of the proposed funding cuts, the National Science Foundation, which was, whose head was, the person and head of it was a Trump appointee, of course, they just started canceling grants before the funding cuts were approved.
Okay, so there was kind of
that they canceled like thousands of grants, and that scared off a lot of people.
And then they cut funding.
No, the 2026 funding didn't end up getting cut. Congress ended up rejecting Trump's proposal. But as a result of Trump's proposal, the NSF did just start cutting grants, canceling them.
Okay, but you said that, but then they fired off.
The firing of the NSB happened about a week and a half ago.
Okay, so this is all like a ongoing. Then there's
an ongoing thing
more
since Trump too.
So you're
yes.
So the indication would be that there's more potentially that could be done to cut or even altogether eliminate that institution. Correct?
I mean, they cut the NSB. If Trump gets his way, half of its funding will be gone. We can go look at other scientific organizations, scientific research departments as well. They're having Trump's administration has proposed that their fundings will be cut as well. The Center for, or the National NCAR, the National Center for Atmospheric Research, was completely dismantled. There's currently a lawsuit involved about that dismantling because it was probably illegal, but that was the largest atmospheric research center in the country. Trump's head of NASA has decommissioned a satellite that was being used to study the amount of carbon dioxide in the Earth's atmosphere because it was politically inconvenient. So yeah, this is a general trend.
Right. Well, I mean, that's kind of my point from earlier, is that the political elements of this country are not conducive to real authentic scientific inquiry or discovery.
Specifically MAGA, right? This has never happened under any other administration.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose.
This is a MAGA problem.
I mean,
this is MAGA being anti-science, not America being anti-science.
Sure.
Ladies and
that
gentlemen,
it's the overall.
We got
I mean,
him. He said sure. Also, he's been on forever, so I should let him go. He's been on for like almost an hour and a half. Sorry to cut you off so abruptly, but you did concede that MAGA is the anti-science, is, the problem here, right? So we got there. All right, we have some super chats to read. Let's go through those, and then we'll bring up our next guest. From Gretchen with the $3.11. Wild homie trying to spin the dictionary. Look, it happens. Sometimes words don't mean words. From House with the $5. Meanwhile, China's rear lights are getting smaller in front of us. Maggots are so afraid of change they will sabotage our own progress. Yeah, so I actually am not sure if he was a conservative, but he seemed like an accelerationist leftist of some kind. But also he had a manifesto, and that's like a crazy thing to say. From Gretchen again with the $3. And verily, master said unto Blitz, trust me, bro. And from Necti with the $2. Blitz, stop right now with your glib naivete. He definitely said naivete a lot. From Otto with the $2. Pretty sure the name is pronounced Mafter. You're funny. You're funny. I see what you did there. From Carrie Yost with the $5. I graduated from University of Pavlov. I'm hungry for some reason. It's funny. Whenever I walk into a Chipotle, my mouth just starts watering. From Philo Dragon with the $5. Always good to see you here. Something happened that I don't like or know about. Therefore, conspiracy. Yeah, I mean, that's it. Like, he wanted to go back to the Rockefellers. He wanted to talk about, like, some Prussian Schule. Like, From Veronica Cromit with the $5. As someone who does study the history of education, this conversation is painful. I'm so sorry. That's my bad. From Philo Dragon with the $5. Let me just pretend I know more about science than the scientists themselves. Look, I'm not going to say it. From Cherry Bomb with the $2. As a leftist, we don't claim him. You're right, we don't. From Simeon Urchin with the $5. As said by Milo Rossi, why do you have to make up a spooky shadow government to hate? You can just hate the actual fucking government. It's so true. From Nekdu with the $2. Blitz, stop right now with your... Oh, I already read that. Oh, wait a minute. Hold on. No. Did I? Yeah, I did. From Philo Dragon with the $5. I'm just afraid of anything I can't control or don't understand, therefore... Did I already read that one too? No, it was just similar. Thank you. From Game Master Flash with the $5. People need to stop using the word research when they mean they read it somewhere or looked it up, usually on the internet with no citation. Yeah, one of the things is I'm actually generally pretty good at the whole fact-checking business, which is why I was able to find out that the Rockefeller thing is not really well substantiated, like in 4 minutes. But I expected that if he was going to claim it so true, then he should have had better sources than trust me. From Jesus Christ with the $10. This caller is a collage of Dunning-Kruger, narcissism, arrogance, egotistical, shoot, someone call a therapist. They'll make a fortune with this guy. Well, who knows if he'll go. From Philo Dragon with the $5. Hello, my first name is Dunning. My last name is Kruger. I haven't studied much, but I know better than you. There's an interesting thing that is probably the case. The Dunning-Kruger effect probably, like, might not even be a real thing, but it has kind of just attached itself to the, the zeitgeist as, like, an example of somebody who is dumb, but also way too arrogant. From Git Stanfield with the $5. Gonna press X to doubt on that one, Chief. From Game Master Flash with the $2. I don't know how to keep it together, Blitz. Practice. Years and years of practice. Somebody said, have you heard of January Walker? Yeah, unfortunately. I think that I don't interact with her because I feel like I would be punching down. I feel like it would make me look bad to interact with her. So, all right, let's talk to co-host, which I imagine is supposed to be co-host, but just not fully written out. Co-host, how's it going?
Oh shit, okay, sorry about that.
You're good.
Yeah, so I just wanted to check in with, like, there's one small thing. Earlier, but I think I forgot what her name is. It's like Ashley Eskridge, I believe.
Amy Eskridge, yes. Not a scientist.
Yes.
Probably not working on anti-gravity.
Well, that's the thing, because, like, basically, like, I mean, if you, like, find anybody that happens to work in, like, CIA or anything like that, there wouldn't be any evidence that would point
She
to
also
them.
doesn't have any background in physics.
Okay, well, that's the thing, is, like, what would point to her being, like, a physicist, basically? Like, if
she doesn't have a bachelor's in physics, she doesn't have a master's in physics, she has no experience working in a physics laboratory that's publicly documented. We have no reason to think that she knows anything about physics.
Okay, no, that's fine. It's just the fact that, like, I don't know, apparently she just, I mean, but, like, her location does make me curious, though, like, her being in Huntsville, Alabama.
Lots of
like,
people live in Huntsville, Alabama. Her dad was a scientist who worked at one of the facilities there. That's why she was born there.
Well, yeah. I mean, no, I can understand cause and effect and all that. It's just the idea of, like, her being, like, that place of all places is kind of curious.
Lots of people live in Huntsville.
Yeah, I mean, well, yeah, lots of people live everywhere, yeah. But, like, is that the only thing that you have, like, against, like, her?
There's no evidence that she ever did any research on anti-gravity. Like, there's zero.
There's nothing weird about that. Yeah, I mean, yeah. Okay. I mean, if that's, like it.
If you want to make the claim that she was working on this, then you better be able to provide evidence. And it's not just enough to say that she said she was. Like, people say things all the time, especially people who, are struggling with, like, mental health conditions. I don't know if she was, but, like, people make a lot of claims about a lot of things, especially like what are they called? Not magnanimous. Like, grand claims, like the kind that she was.
Oh, like grand illusions.
Yeah, I mean, look, again, I'm not a psychologist, I'm not a psychiatrist, so take everything I'm about to say with a grain of salt, but, like, I've spoken and just doing what I do, interacting with people who are conspiracy theorists or, you know, who claim to have like solutions to all of this stuff. There is a common thread amongst that kind of person. And I've talked with a lot of them. And it just seems like I don't have any reason to think that Amy Eskridge was novel in this regard.
Right. Also, yeah, illusions of grandeur. That's the thing.
I mean, that's a specific clinical diagnosis or clinical symptom, I suppose. So I'm not going to make the claim that she was having delusions of grandeur. What I'm going to say is that she was making claims that were extraordinary. And these kinds of claims seem no different than the kinds of claims that I hear when I, talk to all sorts of conspiracy theorists across, the entire field of science and politics. It's always the same.
Okay. No, that's fine. I'm just like she just had like so much weird stuff going for her. Like basically like she had like it almost looked like a sunburn on just her hands, and it was like very even leveled. Like, did you see that at all? Like,
yeah, I did. I made a video about it. She claimed that it was from a directed energy weapon that she was able to block by somehow barricading the door or barricading the window with like cloth and wood. And she also, not she, the person who she claimed that she asked a military friend of hers, or an ex-CIA person or something, to go investigate it. What was the cause of this? And according to the information that we have, this military person made the claim that this was a K-band RF frequency device. In other words, it was a radar transmitter, or a radar, what's it called? The thing that shoots out the radar wave, or the things that are used for radar. And those things pass through wood and pass through cloth and pass through glass. So it's false array. There we go. It's false that this was a directed energy weapon of the kind that she thought it was and that her person thought it was, right? It wouldn't have been able to be blocked by, any of this stuff that she put in front of her window.
Yeah, no, and that's perfectly fine. I mean, I don't like, because also I had a problem with like the fact that like there was like a window nearby her, and apparently had like her outline or the silhouette of her. That didn't make any sense to me whatsoever.
It doesn't make sense, and I don't think it's true. I think somebody just drew a silhouette.
Yeah.
Like if you took away the drawing, then I don't think that you'd be able to identify the picture. I think that she may have seen a silhouette. But like the thing is the kind of heating that would need to.
Oh, I'm sorry, you got muted.
My bad. The kind of radiation that would burn the surface of your hands is like radio waves. Like you can get burns from radio waves, but those pass through the stuff that she claims block it. So I think that she got burnt some other way.
I'm so curious about, because like what does that horizontal line on just the hand, like I mean, even if she's just faking it, like if she's like crazy,
she could have, easily she could have dipped her hands in a boiling pot of water, or she could have just gotten sunburned because like she could have had a window, like honestly she could have had a window open, and because of the angle of the window, the parts of her hands on her keyboard were lit up and they got burnt and the rest of her didn't. Like, it could be a whole lot of things, but she was like, we don't have any reason to think that she was any sort of accomplished scientist at all. We don't even have any reason to think that she's done any research. So like any academic research, I should say. So like and of the other people on the list, like 4 of them are scientists.
Well, that's the whole thing, because I just circle back to like, say if like somebody's like from the CIA or whatever, like there's like zero proof that they were ever in the CIA, because it got covered up and shit. Like it's just sort of like,
hold on, don't say because it got covered up there's just zero proof. Don't say that there's zero proof because it got covered up. You'd have to provide evidence for that claim. Otherwise, why should we believe it?
Yeah, I mean, well, that's the whole thing. I mean, like her being just like near the NASA, like, or not NASA, but like just the research facility.
There are research facilities in tons of cities in the country.
Well, yeah, I'm just saying, like, and then in all of those situations, basically, there may be like just.
Why would they? Okay, so why would you think that? Why would you think that like she was that like her work was being covered up when it was publicly known that she interned at a missile factory when she was like in high school?
I mean, just for literally like military.
Why would they tap her for super secret confidential stuff on anti-gravity when she doesn't have like any degrees in physics?
Oh, well, not publicly. That's the whole thing.
We know what degrees she has. You can't get degrees privately, or you can't get confidential degrees. They're not things that exist. You can get private degrees. You're right. You can't get confidential degrees. They don't exist.
Yeah, no, that's funny. But no, I'm just saying basically like there would be people essentially like if say if she was like a part of like a certain like underground crowd, they would be covering up like her tracks for the sake of like not.
Okay, so now we're just diving deep into like conspiracy stuff. She published her own like she published her own on her own Facebook what degree she got, what company she worked for. That's the only evidence we have. If your claim is that, oh, all of this information we have is fake, why do you believe anything about it?
Yeah, no, I mean I get you, but also like why believe Facebook posts about it too?
It was on her Facebook page, right?
Yeah, no, that's the thing. Yeah,
that's the only source we have on her education.
See, that the fact that there's almost nothing about it is
most people
curious.
Most people don't have their what degree they got like in some official repository. Most people just post like what university they went to, what degree they got on like their Facebook page or maybe their LinkedIn page. Like that's how most that like if you want to find out what somebody did, you go to their Facebook page, you go to their LinkedIn page. That's it. But co-host, I'm gonna let you go because this is super off topic.
Okay.
Thanks for being here. From Ken Altman with the $5. When are we doing quantum biology? What is your opinion on Penrose microtubules, Metzger, and Schrodinger's book, What is Life? I haven't read Schrodinger's book, What is Life, but it seems like the kind of stuff that's Schrodinger wouldn't really have a good opinion on anyway. Penrose's microtubules, they're not Penroses. Microtubules have been known about for a long time. I don't think that the current scientific consensus is not in line with Penrose's, or really it's Hameroff's claim about quantum consciousness stuff. I don't know who Metzger is. I think that we should investigate this stuff, but the Penrose stuff is very, very fringe. And from Rodblow Alres with the 50 Mexican dollars, these MAGA creatures probably would be okay with changing the name of the nation from USA to the United States of Ballroom. That's rough. All right, let's talk to VVV5. VVV5, how's it going?
Hey, not too bad. How are you? Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can. Have we spoken before?
Yes, we have.
On this topic?
Not on this topic.
Okay.
It was
fine.
on
That's fine.
It was on a different topic.
Okay. So do you mind if I ask you just a few quick questions before we jump in?
Sure.
So first, would you call yourself MAGA?
I voted for Trump.
Hold on, are you driving?
No.
I hear a
I'm
blinker.
on the side of the road. Yep, I'm on the side of the road.
Why is your blinker on?
Oh, it's here. There we go. Sorry, I hit it by accident.
Okay.
I know you have a rule that TikTok has a rule that you cannot drive while you're doing it. I'm not driving.
Okay. So you said you voted for Trump. Like, would you say that you're politically aligned with like the stuff that he's pushing for?
Mostly, I would say. I wouldn't say with all of it. I would say with most of it, though.
Okay. Now, just a few quick yes or no questions. You can say you're unsure if you're unsure. Do you think that climate change is real? And if so, do you think that humans are the main cause?
I believe that climate change is real. I do not believe that humans are the main cause.
Okay. Do you think that the vaccines that we typically give to children, like young children, infants, toddlers, are generally safe and effective?
Majority of them, yes.
Okay. And would you say that humans evolved from non-human ancestors?
I would say that did not evolve from non-human ancestors, no.
Okay. Okay, cool. And we can talk about those if you want, but we don't have to. It's just for my own edification. I'm just interested in what people have to say. So, look, my claim is that MAGA is anti-science. What I mean by that is that in as much as any political movement can't be, they're taking the steps to reduce or prevent our ability to conduct science and produce scientific knowledge, and also outright rejecting past scientific knowledge when it's politically inconvenient. So that's what I mean as far as the political ideology.
Okay, so you're saying that they're anti-science in the terms that they're not following the scientific method?
Well, no, I just told you what I meant. I can give you a more explicit definition if you'd like. The definition that I'm working off of because like a political movement isn't a person, so a political movement doesn't follow the scientific method, period. It can't.
They're doing it for their own ideology to
So what I'm saying
fit
is
their own
that
idea.
so I would say that a political movement is anti-science if it systematically rejects or delegitimizes mainstream science, or sorry, we don't need the word mainstream there. Rejects or delegitimizes scientific consensus when it's politically inconvenient. And 2, it undermines the institutions and procedures that produce scientific knowledge.
Okay,
That's what I
so-
mean for a political movement.
Perfect. In that case, then I can talk about that piece a little bit. So I
So-
noticed in the last.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead. The last host that you had, co-host, you spoke about science and about having degrees and stuff like that, and then just now you're speaking about how. I'm sorry, I have ADHD, so my brain doesn't work very well all the time.
Hey, me
But
too.
you said something about the political party doubting some stuff. Give me 1 second. So the reason I bring that up is because you don't have to have a PhD in physics to know physics. You don't have to have a PhD in anything to study it, to be proficient in it. It does help to be academically approved, and it does help to have academically more of that. But like, just because somebody did not go through a university or whatever doesn't, in my opinion, does not mean that they are not scientifically grounded.
Okay, that's irrelevant to the claim that I made. That's irrelevant to the definition I offered, more specifically.
Okay.
My claim isn't you have to go to a university to be an expert, but going to a university, getting a degree, getting a PhD, that is a way of showing that you are an expert. If you are an expert but you don't have those credentials, then you'll need to prove it in some other way.
Correct. So with MAGA being anti-science, the political strategies that they've put on that some of them have gone against science, but based off of what I've looked at, and when I say, I'm going to say research in the way that everybody else says research by looking at it online, just looking at it. When I looked at that type of research, most of the MAGA claims that they have made against the climate and stuff like that, I feel like has been, because nowadays you can look up anything and you can find a confirmation bias against anything. So the fact that we have scientific things that we are looking for example, like the thing that brought up the whole climate change, right? So how is them denying that there is climate change and that humans are the main course of it is what science stands for, right? Humans are causing.
To be clear, you're rambling a little bit, which is fine. I appreciate a good ramble. But one of the parts of the definition of a political movement being anti-science that I offered you is that it rejects or delegitimizes scientific consensus when it's politically inconvenient. So do you agree that scientific consensus amongst climate scientists is that human-caused climate change is happening?
Do you think that's the consensus?
Yes. Do we agree on that? That is okay. That's the scientific consensus. Does MAGA reject or delegitimize that scientific consensus?
It does reject that, yes.
Okay, so they satisfy the first criteria, that they're rejecting or delegitimizing scientific consensus when it's politically inconvenient. And I added the when it's politically inconvenient because they don't have a problem accepting science if it agrees with their political motivations. Climate science is in particular politically inconvenient because the political motivations of MAGA are generally very pro-oil, pro-coal. And, so if climate change is real and it's caused by humans, then that would be very inconvenient for their political claims, right? So they satisfy the first criteria. The second criteria is, do they undermine the institutions? I should say, does the MAGA movement undermine the institutions and procedures that we use to produce scientific knowledge?
Can we repeat that last little bit, the produce knowledge
Yeah,
part?
so does MAGA undermine the institutions that produce or contribute to producing the scientific knowledge?
No.
Okay. If I gave you an example of them doing that, would you change your mind?
Possibly. I'm open to having an open mind about that.
Sure. So an institution that produces or contributes to producing scientific knowledge would be the kind of thing like a university, a funding organization that provides funds for scientific research. These would be the institutions that either produce or help produce scientific knowledge, right?
Mm-hmm.
So one such institution, which is very, very large, it's called the National Science Foundation. Have you heard of it?
I have.
Okay, so the National Science Foundation provides about a quarter of all scientific research funding in the United States. A quarter of all non-medical scientific research funding in the United States. That's a big chunk, right?
Yeah.
We do a lot of scientific research in the United States, and so a quarter of that is going to fund a lot of scientific research. So the National Science Foundation would be an example of an organization that produces or helps produce scientific knowledge by, they help produce it by funding it, right? Now, the head of MAGA, ideologically, is Donald Trump. He is the head of the party. He is the head of the movement. Donald Trump's proposal for 2027, for his funding proposal, is to slash the budget of the National Science Foundation in half.
Mm-hmm.
That would be an example of undermining. So we already agreed that the NSF is an institution that produces scientific knowledge or helps produce scientific knowledge. Would you say that slashing the budget of an institution undermines that institution?
No, because it's actually not slashing the budget. If you look at the actual evidence on that, they're actually reprioritizing that budget towards something different instead of the social sciences.
That's a really big claim to make, considering that they haven't given a breakdown of how the budget should be allocated for 2027. Also, the social sciences in 2024 made up like 1% of the National Science Foundation funding.
Well, like a lot of the stuff that they took out was the funding for like the protected characteristics like race.
So here's the thing. That's made up because the Trump administration has not released a detailed breakdown of what they're removing funding from for the NSF.
I can give you the.
You could give me the one
that.
for 2026. You can't give me one for 2027 because that's not publicly available.
Sorry, I had a phone call in the middle. Can you repeat? You said the last thing I had was
so
you can't give me the one for
Donald Trump's 2026 budget requisition budget proposal was from last year. That got rejected by Congress. Donald Trump's administration recently, this is like a month ago, maybe 3 weeks ago, recently,
in April, yeah.
Yeah, this was in April, published the budget proposal for the entire federal budget, including how much funding should go to the NSF. And it proposed a funding cut of 53%, if I remember correctly. But there was no breakdown of how that funding was being distributed. So we have no knowledge about how the funding is intended to be distributed in the NSF proper. So there's no evidence to support that this is just because they want to defund the social sciences. Also, keep in mind, the social sciences made up like 1% of the total funding of the NSF. And I can fact check that. I'm going off of memory on that.
That's okay. Based off of what you just said, though, you are literally describing exactly what you're trying to go against. You're trying to. You
got to be more specific. I didn't understand what you just said.
Yep, I understand. I realized that. I realized that after I said it. So when you said that, it's defunding that. We are. If you look at the budget, yes, we don't know what the budget is. So how can we say with certainty that we know what Trump is putting that funding towards? Because we don't know that.
We know that the National Science Foundation will get, if Trump gets his way, it will get half as much money as it got last year or this year.
Right. So here's the thing. If I give you unlimited amount of money.
By the way, here's the relevant plot. This is from 2020, but it's approximately the same these days.
Basically.
Here you go. So This is the data that I was looking for. So the social sciences were $208 million in 2020. That is less than a fifth of what the physical sciences got, less than a fifth of what engineering got, less than, a fifth of what other got, a little bit more than a fifth of environmental science, a little bit more than a fifth of the life sciences, and less than a fifth of the math and computer sciences. So it's just not the case that even if you cut all social sciences, that wouldn't account for 52% of the budget.
Based off of those numbers, though, hold on, because the grant funding was taken care of on that too.
This was the entire funding of the National Science Foundation, and so all grants that were allocated from the NSF came from this pie.
Hold on. I think I have that environmental science. Because so here's the thing. When you have that much money, I feel based off of what we have found with the whole what was the whole Elon thing where he like
Doge?
audited Doge, that through that whole Doge thing we found massive amounts of wasted resources, right?
No.
So based off of what I saw, I don't know what data you're looking at, but the data that I was
Wait,
looking
how much wasted resources do you think that Doge found?
I
think they found like
billions, I think.
how much wasted resources did Doge find? Okay, so Doge reported that the U.S. Treasury made $4.7 trillion in unmarked untraceable payments. That was a claim that Doge made. They officially claimed to have cut $130 billion in waste, fraud, and abuse. They identified $20 billion in gold bars for the EPA, $59 million from FEMA, $20 million from USAID, $80 million from the Pentagon. But apparently, I don't see anything from the NSF.
That says that was basically like 70% cut to the physical and computer science research.
What says that?
When I went on my thing and I typed in exactly what you said, it said, given my theoretical interest in physics.
Did you say given my theoretical interest in physics?
Yes.
Okay, so you don't have an actual interest in physics.
No, I do.
But it's theoretical. Your interest in physics is theoretical.
I am interested in theoretical physics. I know my
Okay.
grammar is not quite great on
Okay.
that one. Were you trying to do that one on purpose, or was that
Yeah, a
was
little
I
bit.
generally coming off? Okay.
Yeah. So what's the evidence that there's any waste, fraud, and abuse found at the NSF?
So we don't have that evidence, but based off of everything else that's going on and that cutting that pricing, cutting that budget in half, what you're basically doing, you're forcing that thing to basically cut out anything that's unnecessary. Once you have gotten that and are able to prove that that is working properly, you can then increase that budget later on.
Do you think that cutting the funding in half will reduce the number of, because keep in mind, the NSF doesn't really do much. All it does is it evaluates grants and then it decides how to disperse that money to scientists. Right? So the NSF isn't like some big organization with like a lot of bloat or something. It's just a grant funding agency. So where is, and keep in mind, like the actual amount that we spend on the NSF, not the money that they then pass on to researchers, is very small. So like where's the waste coming from? Where is it happening?
Well, based off of, are you talking about the waste specifically in the NSF?
In the NSF, yeah.
Okay. So in order to be able to give you that answer, I would have to look at their actual numbers, and nobody has those actual numbers that I'm aware of, unless you're internally able to do that.
So I'm just looking at the costs, and we have the numbers from 2024. Yeah, we have the numbers from 2024, and we might even have the numbers from 2026. Let me check. Okay, so that was the. Hold on, I just want to find these numbers. Okay, so in 2024 it was 400 and. So the agency operations and award management. So this is the total cost of the, like the organization doing what it does. In 2024 was $448 million. So that's running the whole thing. That's in 2024. that was like, hold on, I just want to make sure that I get the number right. That was less than 5% of the total budget. So even if they just cut out every single part of the bureaucracy, all of the bureaucracy, they would only cut the budget by 5%. The rest goes to research and research related activities. Almost all of it. So it was something, so they had like a $9 billion budget in 2024. $448 million went to operations, like another $5 million went to the National Science Board. Like 25 million went to the Office of the Inspector General. Then there was some stuff, then there was $234 million for the major research equipment and facilities construction. So this was for building big things. And then $7.2 billion went to research and related activities, and then $1 billion and change went to STEM education. So no, there's no bureaucratic stuff that's costing 50% of the budget. What
Right,
if you cut if you cut all of the bureaucracy away, all of the education away, all of the funding, all of the major research equipment and facilities construction, if you cut away everything except the research and related activities, well, let's do the math. You would be left with only cutting 21%. So literally 79% of the entire budget goes directly to scientists. So where's the waste?
So basically, based off of their Doge's claims, basically they're saying that the low risk, low reward type idea.
What low risk? Doge did, as far as I know, Doge didn't say anything about the NSF having waste.
No, but the National Science Foundation basically is the research that they do and the grants that they have. Obviously, that you benefit from that.
No.
No. Okay. Who benefits?
I know people who do, but scientists that apply for it and get the grants do.
Okay.
Like
Now,
I have a friend on. I have a mutual and friend whose PhD dissertation or PhD defense I just watched yesterday. Some of her funding came from the NSF.
okay. Now, here's where I'm gonna try to move things a little bit in a slightly weird direction, hopefully. When the scientific research that we're doing right now, I would argue is null and void.
What the fuck does that mean?
I know, right? Okay. So that's a huge claim. So you have to
I don't even know what it means. What does it mean for research to be null and void?
the stuff that we're like the major physics that we're doing right now, and I would argue some of your research that you're doing with the geometry of space-time, what's the word? Californian? I don't remember what the specific thing that you have.
Make your point.
It's one of your, what's that?
Make your point. What does it mean for research to be null and void?
Exactly. So the research that is happening right now is basing everything that the fact that dark matter exists or all these other stuff exists, and the physics that we're basing it off is based off of limited knowledge and limited variables, limited
You just blowing from stupid town?
funny. No, so here's the thing. I make the claim that dark matter doesn't exist.
Cool. I don't care. There are scientists who are probably NSF funded who make the same claim.
Here's the thing, though. That whole thing has to be okay. No, you just said NSF funded that say the same thing, didn't you?
Yeah, I would bet you I could find a.
No, you don't have to. I believe you.
Like 100%. The NSF funds a ton of research.
So you view that by MAGA cutting 50% off of NSF, that is anti-science.
That is.
Because
I'll give you the definition again. That
you gave
undermines an institution that produces or helps produce scientific knowledge.
So you would
We
view
already
that,
agreed that the NSF was such an institution that helps produce
Correct.
scientific knowledge, and by cutting its funding, you are undermining that institution.
Right. Our definitions are still correct. Everything is still within the same
So
thing
the
that we're talking
claim
about.
is that they are undermining the NSF. And by the way, we can just look at what the 2026 budget was. We don't have, or what the 2026 budget proposal was. We don't have the 2027 budget proposal, but the claim, or the proposed budget in 2026, this was proposed last year, they wanted to cut the actual research funding by more than half. Right? From $7 billion, $7 billion and change, to less than $3 billion. They wanted to cut the amount of funding that we give to educating on STEM. So this is like educating engineers and scientists.
Where is that at? Where are you getting this information?
This is from congress.gov.
Okay, perfect. I want to make sure that I have that access to later.
So they wanted to cut the STEM education funding by like almost a quarter, actually more than a quarter.
I agree with that.
Sorry, by 3/4. We should be funding STEM education less?
Because, okay.
And
Blitz,
by the way, here's the funny part. You thought it was about cutting bureaucratic waste. They only wanted to cut the actual bureaucracy at the NSF by 25%. That was the smallest cut that they wanted to make.
I'm going to address the first point that we made with the funding the STEM less. Because everything that has come, when you were in school, Blitz, and when I was in school, because I'm assuming we're close to the same age.
How old are you?
I'm 36.
I'm 32. So it's close enough.
Close enough. So based off of that, though, like when everything was like the mathematics back then, everything was simple, everything made sense, everything was done with the STEM. Nowadays, everything in mathematics is done in a very complex way. Everything is basically done in such a way that it makes no feasible sense.
You don't understand how math is taught to increase numeracy.
That doesn't increase numeracy.
It does.
By doing it the way that they're doing it, it's a waste of time.
No, it actually increases numeracy. Like if you ask mathematicians how they like calculate stuff in their head, they will tell you exactly what is being taught to the kids.
I don't have evidence for one way or the other on that one. So
then why are you making a claim if you don't have evidence for it?
No, I'm the mathematicians part. That's how they do math.
Well, you can ask me. That's how I do math in my head. I do it the same way that they're teaching the kids these days. And I wasn't taught to do it this way. Well, I worked as a mathematician I worked in a mathematics department for 2.5 years. I published in mathematical journals, so I'm both a mathematician and a physicist, but that's neither here nor there. I was taught to do arithmetic in the same way that you were. You know, if you want to do addition, you line them up and then you carry the one and blah, blah, blah. That's not how I do mathematics in my head. I'm very good at mental math. I do mathematics in my head the same way that it is taught to children nowadays.
Well, as other people are saying on this, I've given no claims to evidence on this thing. So, Blitz, you normally do a pretty good job. I think last time I talked to you was about the creation, and you gave me some good things to look at towards the age of the Earth. We were talking about zirconian crystals.
Zirconium, yeah. Or zircon crystals, rather.
Zircon crystals, yep. So, do you have anything to help me figure out in your direction, basically, to
guide
me towards that direction?
Look, so I don't have like a big repository. Sorry. But there are a few things that you should look into. You should look into the NCAR, the National Center for Atmospheric Research. You should look into the NSF as far as funding is concerned. You should look into the budget proposals for the Department of Defense for 2026, the budget breakdown. And you will go find that in the Department of Defense budget breakdown, there's an area for scientific research. Because, you know, the DoD does some scientific research. They even wanted to cut the scientific research in the Department of Defense.
Which that's odd.
That is odd. You can go look at the NASA, the budget proposal for NASA from 2026. Again, the reason I'm saying for 2026 instead of 2027 is because we don't have the detailed breakdowns that are being proposed for 2027 yet. But in 2026, we can imagine it's probably going to be the same thing because the cuts are basically the same size. In 2026, if you go look at NASA's budget proposal, you can see the breakdown by area. And what you'll find there is that they wanted to slightly increase the branch of NASA that does sorry, I just want to make sure that I pull up the right thing. They wanted to slightly increase the branch of NASA that does exploration, and then they wanted to then they wanted to cut in half the budget that does research. And I can just show you the breakdown really quick. Let me just pull it up just so you can see what I'm talking about.
Is this still on the Congress.gov?
This is on NASA.gov.
NASA.gov. Okay.
So here, let me show you. So this is the document that I'm looking at. It's called the fiscal year 2026 budget technical supplement. So again, this is out of date. This got rejected, but this was their intention. So we can go look at the breakdown. The NASA total budget for 2025 was just under 25 billion. The request was just under 19 billion. So with exploration, they wanted to increase the budget ever so slightly. They wanted to increase it from 7.66 billion to 8.32 billion or 8.31 billion. The space operations, they wanted to decrease slightly. That's like the International Space Station and, you know, space flight and things like this. And if you go look at the science budget, they wanted to nearly cut it in half. So the proposed budget was only down 25% for NASA, but if you go deeper and look inside, they wanted to cut the science nearly in half. And so, like, that's bad. It should really make you curious as to why specifically all of the science and research branches of these departments are being cut so significantly, or being proposed to be cut so significantly.
To kind of look towards, because that does bring up curiosity in myself on those things. I did not know that particular thing. I did not know that specific document was existing.
Yep.
To be honest with you. So I will look into that one.
Okay.
Blitz, I greatly appreciate your time. Thank you so much. I appreciate that you do what you do, and I thank you for what you're doing. Thank you.
Thanks for being here, BB.
Bye-bye.
He's actually, he did come on last time, and he's a little bit combative at the beginning, but he does look into things at the end, which is super good faith, and I do appreciate that. Thank you for the tiny dandelion. Let's read some super chats, and then we'll bring on our next guest. We have $2 from Will Day with the saying, laugh when Blitz makes a good point. Good strat. It is a good strategy. It's a rhetorical win. And then we have $5 from Fear's Interaction with the saying, my in-laws are super MAGA even in 2026, and I really appreciate you doing these. Well, these are only effective for people who claim that they care about science, but, you know, I think that that's a substantial portion of the population. All right. Let us move on to our next guest. Oh, I see somebody saying skinny, greasy hair man, skinny, greasy hair, man bun, overeducated, no practical wisdom. Well, yes, I am skinny. I had surgery. I had a cancer scare like 3 months ago, and I had surgery a month and a half ago. So yes, I am skinny. I did lose some weight. So I'm sorry. I'm sorry that offends you. This isn't greasy. This is shiny. My hair is very shiny. Not a man bun either. It's a ponytail. I just have long hair. Keep it tied up so it doesn't get in my face. Overeducated. I guess if you think education's a bad thing, then you'd think that overeducation would be a thing that could exist. No practical wisdom, bet. But feel free to join the guest box and we can have a conversation about it unless you're afraid. Let's bring up our next guest. Let's talk to the DBQP.
Hey, good morning or afternoon.
The DBQP, how's it going?
It's going pretty well. How about yourself?
I'm doing all right. Is there a preferred name? Would you prefer something that I call you something Doobie, or what would you want?
Oh, you can call me Josh. That's my first
All right,
name.
Josh. Josh, so I have a few questions that I'd like to ask you before we get started. Is that fair?
Yeah, that's fine.
So first question is pretty straightforward. Would you consider yourself MAGA?
No.
Okay. Then second question may or may not be irrelevant. Why'd you come up?
I came up because I disagree. I disagree that MAGA is anti-science, although I don't identify as MAGA specifically. I tend to be of the opinion that rather Donald Trump, you know, prefers the sciences with which he's familiar, right? The military science, political science.
The ones that are not inconvenient?
I'm sorry?
The ones that are not politically inconvenient, you mean?
Well, I think those are just the ones that he's expertise in. I don't know if show business, you know, could be considered a science, but he certainly made dinner theater. our country, right? But I'm also, also objectively, right? There is the science ecosystem is changing as AI becomes more prominent, right?
Well, Trump is making it worse. That's the point.
Well, how's he making it worse?
Well, he's actively fighting to reduce funding to our scientific researchers in the country.
Let me ask you a question.
He's hiring people who are science conspiracy theorists to be in his administration.
It's hard for me to say who knows what or who in that administration is trying to communicate, because
Donald Trump said in 2015 that global warming is a hoax, or that climate change is a hoax, I think is his quote.
That's the subject of climate change, right? All of the different things that contribute to it, right? Like, I'm not of the opinion that mankind is not like a major contributor to climate change. Whether we are, making an existing kind of shift in the climate worse, but irrespective of our activity, we would still be seeing a shift in the climate is not like my area of expertise for certain.
Well, the climate scientists disagree. Climate scientists there is consensus that humans are the main cause of climate change.
Yeah, and that is, of course, right, absence evidence of anything else, right? Anything
it's been looked at plenty, right? Like,
right.
Climate scientists have looked into other forcing mechanisms, volcanoes, solar flares, changes in atmospheric composition, with the exception of carbon dioxide and methane and some other well-known greenhouse gases. These are not playing a significant role. The Milankovitch cycle is not relevant here.
I just wonder how many factors are essentially all the evidence is restricted to climatologists and other kind of environmental scientists, right? And I also wonder.
I don't know what that sentence meant. But look, I mean, it isn't the case that climate change is a hoax.
Well, for
yet
example,
Donald Trump's administration tried to shut down, and I think that they're currently fighting over this in court. But they tried to shut down the National Center for Atmospheric Research because it's politically inconvenient, because it produces climate science.
The one of the things I wonder is how much duplicate science gets produced as a matter of redundancy and as a matter
Seems off topic.
Well, that's it's look, again, I don't have insight into Donald Trump's brain, right? I can't climb into his brain, but
we don't need to rely on his motivations. We can just look at what he does. We can look at what he does. We can look at what he says. We can look at what his administration does and says. We can look at what his followers do and say.
And we can know what we know, right? But if there were factors like classified weaponry or classified astrological phenomena that were contributing to climate change, this would be something that people simply couldn't study, right?
Yeah, and if my grandma had wheels, she'd be a bicycle. Like, we could say ifs, ands, or buts about anything. That doesn't mean that we should believe that unless we have evidence to believe that.
I have to say, I'm very disturbed by the image of anyone's grandmother as a bicycle. I need to take a moment.
I don't know. It's a very silly phrase, but it's fun to use.
Yeah. I wonder about these things. I wonder what kind of
you
science
can wonder
is
without being a conspiracy theorist.
A conspiracy theory, in my opinion, right? A conspiracy theory, like flat Earth, for example, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm always coming on here saying, Doc, you got to get him hooked on relativity. Because in my opinion and in my experience, a conspiracy theory is meant to lead people away from the secret, right? And towards some other nonsense that's going to spin them out endlessly, right? So whatever the secret is behind flat Earth, the flat earthers and the people promulgating that conspiracy don't want people to know. And of course, my personal
This is just another, like, the irony is that you're just doing a deeper conspiracy.
My personal opinion about the flat Earth is, of course, that it has to do with relativity and the explanation of dark matter and dark energy. But anyways, those people are certainly dark, and I don't know what's the matter with them. But I don't like their energy.
Is it the case that the MAGA movement as a political ideology systematically rejects or delegitimizes scientific consensus when it's politically inconvenient? Is that true, or is that false?
Outwardly, yes.
Okay.
Outwardly, especially as it concerns climate science.
Is it?
Yes. Oh, you know what? I gotta go.
Vaccines?
Trump's on. Thanks for having me up, man. I appreciate you.
You gotta go. Trump's on. Okay, whatever he says. I actually don't know if is Trump doing a thing. He could have been telling the truth, and maybe he's just really into Trump. Well, let's read some more. Let's read another super chat. I think we got one more. No, two more. From ATX HTX with the $5. It's my birthday today. Well, happy birthday, ATX. Thanks for fighting the good fight and teaching us so many cool things every day. Look, I do my best. It is really fun to do, which is why I love doing what I'm doing. And from Glitterlock with the $10 for the Gino da Campo quote. Is that it? Is okay? I didn't even know who it originated from. So if it originated from this Gino da Campo fella, then like cool, I guess. But it's not something I know about. I'm just checking for like anything on Cash App. By the way, while we're here, before I bring on my next guest, if you haven't already, you should check out my website. It's just blitz.phd, not blitz.phd.com, blitz.phd. On it, you can find links to my Discord server, which you can join, and I send out announcements there. You can ask me questions there. You can find out what I'm doing when I post videos, when I'm doing live streams there. You can also follow me on various other platforms if you do them. You know, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, whatever. There's also like down at the bottom of the website somewhere, there's like a place where there's like a few links that you can go to, or that you can, you know, click on if you want to support me, however much you want to support me, if you want to support me at all. But if you're looking for, like, you know, if you want to cut the cable and instead you want to support somebody else rather than Paramount, you could in principle send me $4 or $5 a month as a YouTube member, and that would mean that I get more reliability in my income and you'd get access to my debate notes. The debate notes are, you know, they have a whole bunch of facts and sources and arguments and counter arguments and papers and lovely stuff in them. It's like pages and pages of this stuff. If you want to. You also get emojis and stuff in the YouTube chat if you become a member. So $4 or $5 a month, consider it. Obviously no obligation, but it's fun. And, you know, then I'll appreciate you more. I kid. Anyway, let's bring up our next guest. We actually have a guest from Discord named Killing Time. So let's bring up Killing Time. Killing Time, how's it going?
Blitz, what's up, man?
Not a whole lot. Killing Time, have we spoken before?
We've never spoken. Let me exit out of the YouTube. There you go.
Sure. Cool. So, Killing Time, you mind if I ask you a few questions before we jump in?
Go for it.
So, first, would you consider yourself MAGA?
I would say like 80% MAGA.
Okay. Second question, do you think that climate change is happening? And if so, do you think that humans are the main cause?
I believe it definitely happens. I believe humans are a cause, but not the main one.
Okay. Do you think that the vaccines that we typically administer to young children, think of like infants and toddlers, you know, the vaccines that you get when you're like a little baby, do you think that those are generally safe and effective?
I'm 43. The vaccines I got when I was a toddler are probably a small percentage of what the current ones are getting. So I don't even know.
We can just look really quick. I'm curious how much it's changed. I mean, you're not that much older than me. So like the Hep B vaccine, the DTaP vaccine, diphtheria, tetanus, and acellular pertussis, like, you know, do you think that these are the kinds of things that are safe generally? Measles, mumps, rubella vaccine, varicella vaccine, Hep A. That's what I'm talking about.
I can't speak to that.
Okay, I'll just put unsure. It's fine. And do you think that humans evolved from non-human ancestors?
I'm unsure about that too.
Okay, cool. That's fine. Now we can talk about these if you want. But it's just for my own edification. So look, the claim in the background, which you probably can't see anymore, but the claim in the background is that MAGA is anti-science. And that means something very specific. It's how I'm using this language. What I mean is that MAGA as a political movement kind of does two things and does them a lot. The first is that it is actively trying to make our ability to conduct scientific research worse. Whether intentionally or not, it's something that's actively happening. And second, the scientific knowledge that we do have is being rejected if it's politically inconvenient. So that's what I mean by anti-science. So do you think that that's a fair definition?
So I have a physics background as well.
Oh, okay.
And I do agree that the agenda is to reduce the amount of bad science that occurs.
And who do you think would be the right person to, determine which science, or who do you think would be the right person or the right people that would determine which science is good and which science is bad?
I just learned from you today that he fired the NSB, which
Yep.
is a little crazy.
Yep,
But
those are the people.
maybe there were some people in that lot that were actively going against his ideal agenda.
Well,
I
wait a
don't
minute. So is it about his political agenda, or is it about what's good or bad science?
Well, the political agenda is to reduce bad science.
So who would be the most, which class of people would be most effective at determining good or bad science from each other, or distinguishing good or bad science from each other?
Scientists.
Yeah, okay. So who are these people?
I'm saying
Who are the unbiased scientists that would be doing this in Trump's administration?
The new roster of NSB. Whenever
I don't know
they
if
show
there
up.
is one yet. And how would you know that they're unbiased?
That's a good question.
I mean,
would
so
hope they come from
here's what I can tell you. Here's what I can tell you. So the NSB is made of 24 individuals. They rotate, so they're kind of like senators in that they have a 6-year term, but
they rotate every 2 years.
Yeah, exactly. So of the 22 individuals, at least 6 of them would have been appointed by Trump, and then 16 of them would have been appointed by Biden. So do you think that group of scientists would be more or less biased than 24 NSB members that are all appointed by Trump?
I would say they would be biased towards reducing bad science.
You think that there would be no
the new roster?
Okay, so you're of the opinion that their goal would be, so to be clear, nobody likes bad science. The question is, who is well suited to determine what's good or bad science? And you said unbiased scientists. So this is not, I'm not asking about whether they're biased about whether or not they want to reduce bad science or not. I'm asking whether or not they're biased in their ability to determine what is good or bad science.
Well, I guess if they're determining what's good and bad science, they would be biased towards good science automatically.
No, the question is, look, okay.
So
I don't know if you're being intentionally obtuse.
I'll retract my unbiased scientist stance.
Okay, so who do you need?
Scientists.
Do you want? Look, who determines which science is good and which science is bad?
I would say it would be a group decision. I mean,
okay,
when they allocate,
and who would be most efficient?
They do it as a.
Who would be most effective or who would be most likely to come to the correct conclusion, like the true conclusion about what good science is and what bad science is?
I don't know if anyone can answer that question. Like, what do you mean? Like,
well, look, so there's not like some good science meter. There's not like a way to objectively determine what's good science and what's bad science.
I mean, when you look at titles of projects and they automatically have red flags, then you just don't fund them.
So, okay, hold on. We can get to that in a minute, but back up. There is no objective measure of what is good science or bad science because science is a human endeavor. So it's like what's good and what's bad. That is a value-based assessment, right? You value some things, you don't value other things. So you're going to say that the things that you don't value are bad science, the things that you do value are good science. So the question is, if you want to maximize the quality of your scientific research, which is what we're really interested in here, right? We want the best scientific research we can get. Not morally best, but like we want the scientific research that can produce the most useful information that we can. Perhaps just the most information that we can. Would you say that you want politically motivated people making those decisions, or would you want like non-political people making those decisions?
So when it comes to when I said red flags, there are certain types of projects that uh, are automatically less valuable, in my opinion, than say most physics research.
Okay, can you give me an example of a scientific? Well, okay, actually, we should be a little bit careful here. So the budget proposal was to cut it by half, right? So it seems like that if you want to say that they weren't actually reducing quality science, they were just cutting bad science, it seems like that your burden would be to show that something like half of all of the funding was being awarded for projects that you would consider bad science.
So let's start with the pie chart that you're showing, where there was a big portion allocated to other.
One sec, let me pull it up. I just had it up. I don't know where it went. I just need to save that, to be honest. I need to just like put it in my document or something. I can never. Okay, give me 1 second, okay? I will find it again. I'm just gonna go into my history. This one? Yeah, here we go. Okay, cool, found it. One moment. There we go. This guy. Right, you're talking about this one? Oh, you can't see it.
See it, but
yeah, okay. So about $1 billion is other.
Right.
Now that could mean a few things. It doesn't actually tell us what it means, but we could speculate. But suppose that it was all bad, right?
Okay, let's do it.
So suppose it was all bad. The funding in 2020 was like $6 billion or something like that. $1 billion of it was other. About 200 million of it was social sciences. 37 million of it was psychology. So let's assume that we cut all of that. Now that would be cutting about $1.25 billion from a total budget of around $6 billion. So we can just divide one by the other, and that would give us a cut of about 20%, a little bit more than 20%. So what about the other 30% that we have to cut? Environmental science? Is that the stuff that we cut? Physical sciences, math and computer science?
Environmental science.
Life science, engineering?
Science should be part of physical science.
Okay, well, I mean, it's just separated in priority, but like you can lump it in, and that's fine.
I always wondered why there aren't that many groundbreaking climate science projects, and a lot of the funding goes to theoretical.
What do you mean there aren't? What do you mean there aren't that many groundbreaking climate science projects? Environmental science, by the way, is not just climate science.
I guess you're right.
It's also going to be like, I imagine, and you know, I don't know how it's broken down here, but I imagine it's also going to be like things that would involve like forestry, like whatever science is involved in that, I guess botany or something like this. Right. Things that would involve like meteorology, like weather. So it's a whole, it's much broader than just climate science. Yeah, ecosystems, like all that stuff. Okay, so we've now, assuming that everything in the other category is bad, which who knows what if it is, and assuming that we cut all of the social sciences and all of psychology, which by the way is a little crazy, but okay, that only accounts for 21% or slightly less than 21% of the budget. So what else do we cut to get to the magic 53%?
I'm not a fan of the other 30% being cut, but when it comes to,
so you agree that that is undermining the National Science Foundation's ability to produce or help produce science?
You said NSF was only a quarter of the total research funding, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a quarter of the non-health research funding. A lot of research just gets funded by like universities themselves.
Well, and other government agencies.
Yeah, I mean the DOE is involved. The NIH is for health stuff. The DoD is sometimes involved. Department of Agriculture, I'm sure, is involved plenty. But the NSF is the largest non-health granting organization in the country. I don't know about the rest of the world, but in the country, it's the largest. So
And
it seems like that,
if
you know,
if the current NSF,
Mhm.
the NSB was unwilling to make any cuts, whether it was 30% or 50%.
Do you have any
Do you
evidence that
think
that's the case? But by the way, just to be clear, we've already agreed that cutting 50% would restrict the NSF's ability to conduct or to help produce good science. Because even if you throw away all of the stuff that you consider bad science, there's still 30% that is unaccounted for that would have to come from good science.
Well, I'm not admitting to that every project in all of those quote unquote better science is good science.
Okay, so then who should be the ones who determine whether or not those projects are good science? Is it you, or is it like a scientist?
It's probably a group of scientists.
Yeah, they're called the National Science Board.
But
and
like
now we don't even have now those people don't even exist.
Appointed by Biden.
16 would have been appointed by Biden.
Yeah,
at
16 were appointed by Biden.
At most 16 were appointed by Biden. At least 6 were appointed by Trump. So why would Trump fire the guys that he hired?
Yeah, I don't know.
It seems like he just doesn't want to fund science as much. From his actions, anyway.
Do you think corporations should be funding more science through the institutions? Or
no, that's a horrible idea.
Why?
Well, the most famous example of corporations funding science was when corporations funded pro-cigarette science.
No.
Big air quotes.
Corporations have their own research and
so science. The thing about asking a corporation to fund science is that corporations are generally interested in quarterly or at best annual returns, whereas science, especially fundamental science, often has returns on the scale of decades. So no, corporations, if we left it just up to corporations would not be funding fundamental science at all.
I didn't say just. They should be able to contribute if they want to.
I mean, they can contribute if they want to, they just don't.
I think some of them do.
Some of them do, very few. And the amount that they do is small. And then if they do and they make some breakthrough, we don't benefit. We have to pay for whatever their breakthrough is. If the breakthrough is funded by the federal government, we all get to benefit for free.
No, we don't.
Yeah, we do. That's part of that is part of the conditions for the NSF. For NSF grants. Right? Like that this is publicly available knowledge.
Wait. Most research papers are published in journals that aren't publicly available. You have to pay for them. So we can go look at the exact criteria for NSF, but often they require them to be open access. They require the resulting publications to be open access. Not always. I mean, at least open access is a fairly new thing for journals. But to be clear, they are still publicly available. Like the actual science, the product produced. The research that went into the science may or may not be. I mean, you can just, whether or not the details of the methodology or whatever is publicly available, that's a different thing. But if you wanted that research, yeah, somebody mentioned in the comments, you could just go to a library and they'll have it, which is another publicly funded good, by the way. Well, I mean, I'm 80% MAGA, so this 20% that I don't like is part of the science detraction. Now, so I concede that MAGA is apparently within the past couple months less scientifically oriented. I mean, this started at the beginning. It was pretty bad during his first presidency, but it really ramped up within the first few months of his second presidency. So at the beginning of last year. Well, they didn't fire the NSB until last week, you said. No, they didn't fire the NSB. What they did do is they proposed the NSF budget cuts, and then even without this getting passed through Congress, because the budget cuts, remember, got rejected.
The NSF budget cuts got rejected by Congress. But even though the budget wasn't passed by Congress, the NSF, whose head was a Trump appointee, the NSF cut hundreds of grants. Probably illegally,
I mean, there's
actually.
probably like 10,000 grants that come through, so hundreds isn't that big of a deal.
So they cut I think they cut 404 grants from one university alone. And those are the ones that we know about because those are made publicly available. Sorry?
That number doesn't seem that big to me.
404 grants from a single university?
From a single university. That same university could be putting in 4,000 grants proposals a year. Why not?
It's just there just aren't that many faculty. Okay, so as of November 2025, the NSF terminated or froze almost 2,000 grants, which resulted in I guess apparently, yeah, so this is from Nature, which is a, you have a background in physics, so this is a reputable source.
I'm granting your sourcing for sure.
Yeah. So a total of, I'm just reading from Nature now. In an unprecedented move, officials, this is from 2025, and let's just get the month right. This is from January of, this is from the beginning of 2026, so they're talking about 2025. So in an unprecedented move, officials began terminating already funded grants at the National Institute of Health in February, and later at the NSF, so at the NIH and the NSF, two of the largest public supporters of scientific research in the United States. A total of 5,844 NIH grants and 1,996 NSF grants were canceled or suspended.
Out of how many total grants?
Well, hold on, we'll get into that.
Okay.
The Trump administration disproportionately canceled or froze projects on topics it disfavors, such as misinformation, vaccine hesitancy, infectious diseases, and research on people from underrepresented ethnic and gender groups, which it has called discriminatory and unscientific. Over the course of 2025, more than 7,800 grants were canceled or suspended. The inclusion of supplements means that some grants, less than 0.5% of the total, appear 2 or 3 times. So they're not being overcounted here. New York had the most canceled or frozen grants, totaling nearly 1,500. That's kind of strange. I wonder why. Some of the largest grants are for clinical trials, cancer centers, and infrastructure, and they can run over many years. Okay, so we just want to go find how many total grants from NSF 2025. That's the number that we want.
Yeah.
So 8,300 competitive awards in 2025. So they canceled a quarter. Yeah, a quarter of grants that had already been funded were canceled. That's enormous. And this was illegal, by the way, because there was no budget, there was no appropriation of those funds, and Congress requires that all of those funds be spent. You can't just not spend the money. And so this has actually been fought over in court.
Yeah, I don't necessarily agree with them having stopped already funded grants.
Well, so that started at the beginning of 2025. This isn't some new thing.
Yeah, I mean, I don't agree with it. Even, I mean, the science could be bad. Those quarter could be bad, but I still would like the government to abide by the rulings its institutions have already made.
I'm glad that we agree that this is bad. Now, we should also hopefully agree that just because a science is not physics or chemistry doesn't mean it's not worth doing. Surely you agree that, I don't know, archaeology is worth funding.
For the most part, I would say any science that uses questionnaires to produce statistics are usually highly skewable.
So
results.
Economics,
social sciences, economics, probably that whole other category.
So just to be clear, psychology doesn't use questionnaires, at least not only questionnaires. So why would you want to cancel psychology? Psychology does like genuine scientific experimentation.
Small sliver of the pie, I would just let it go anyway. For the most part.
As in, you would let it be funded, or you would not want to fund it?
I would let it be funded. Yeah.
You're right, but you called it bad science. And by the way, to make the claim that all of these sciences just use questionnaires. I don't really think that that's true, to be honest.
No, I'm just saying in my opinion, any science that uses questionnaires and humans that, I mean, you can't reproduce the results for a lot
So
of
how would you
these
suggest that we study things
studies.
like human interactions scientifically?
I think it would just should be less funded and more rigorous.
That wasn't my question. How do you think that we should study human interactions? Like using what methods?
I mean, what do you mean? Like social
what would you do?
interactions, or
Yeah.
how we interact with our environment?
How would you collect
or-
data? How would you collect data about, say, tendencies of, let's say that you have a hypothesis, right? Maybe the hypothesis is that people who grow up in households that give frequently to charity, those people are more likely to grow up to be, high income earners. Maybe that's your hypothesis, right? Maybe you're proposing that there's some link between parental charity and how effective the parenting will be to produce a happy and successful member of society. Maybe you believe that maybe that's your hypothesis. That'd certainly be interesting and worthwhile to study, right? Because we want productive and happy and generally well-off members of society, right?
I wouldn't suggest that then more families that now suddenly start giving to charity would produce offspring that are higher income earners. So
This is an example. This is an example. I'm giving you an example of some hypothesis that somebody has, right?
I wouldn't fund that research.
You don't think it'd be worthwhile to know if higher charitable donations correlate to, higher happiness, higher success in life for children? You don't think that that's useful to know?
Not really, because
okay,
it seems like all the people that are giving to charity are doing as much as they can already.
We're talking about the children. We're talking about the children, not the parents. The children.
Right. The parents that give to charity have happier, more productive children.
Well, that's the claim. We don't know if that's true. How would we find out if that's true?
Even if it is true, it's not going to change anything.
You don't think that's important to know?
Not really.
Okay, do you think that there's anything important to know about human societal or humans' interactions with the broader society that they live in? Do you think that it's interesting? Do you think that it's useful to know, for example, how frequently husbands rape their wives?
That is more useful to know.
Okay, how would you collect that data?
Do you think questionnaires would be the best way?
I don't know why you're answering my question with a question. How would you collect that data?
I would probably use criminal data.
Okay, so how are you going to correlate the frequency of criminal? And by the way, there were a lot of states, and I actually think that this might still be this. 1 sec, let me just double check something. So, prior to 1993, actually, let's say that the thing that we're interested in studying is how the occurrence of marital rape has changed over time, right? Maybe we want to see, like, are the things that we're doing to combat marital rape, are they being effective, or should we change course to be more effective?
On that from decades ago.
Sorry?
How can you get good data on that?
That's a really good question.
Ago?
Yeah, how would you collect that data?
It doesn't seem like you have a really good way of doing that.
You can ask people, obviously.
I mean, not really.
You can't ask people?
Wait. It's not necessarily good data because they can lie.
Yeah, people can lie. That's why you make sure you account for statistical or systematic errors in your data as a result. That's what sociologists do. One of their jobs is figuring out a way to tease apart the incorrect or the false data in surveys and in, you know, information that they gather from the true general trends. That's like one of the things that sociologists are best at.
If you say so. I'm not an expert.
Apparently. But surely you know that most women don't report rape, right?
It's a large number, yeah.
So even if you were just interested in it today, well, criminal data is not going to be enough because most women don't report it.
Well, you'd have to
Frequent marital rape is actually, just looking at criminal data won't be enough.
I mean, even if you ask a lot, there are a whole lot of people that have different ideas of what rape is, and sometimes
that's why one of the jobs of a sociologist is to write, or when you're collecting data in the form of surveys, you write your surveys in a way that are most effective at testing your hypothesis rather than being vague. That's a skill.
Maybe I need to learn more about sociology and how they do their jobs, because
it sounds like you do, because it sounds like you just wanted to say sociology is worthless because they just use surveys. But like, sociology is a science. There's a reason why it's in the science department.
To me, it's less scientific.
They're using the scientific method. They have an observation. They form a hypothesis. They test the hypothesis. They analyze the data. They come to a conclusion. How is it less scientific?
Well, I guess a lot of it comes down to sample sizing, demographic choices, the fact that you can't, I mean, if you ask the same people different questions, they might answer differently.
Yeah, you're right. All of these things are relevant, and all of these things are taken into account for by like good survey design, right? So often, in fact, you know, if you've ever taken a survey before, often you'll find that there are several questions that are phrased slightly differently from each other at different parts of the survey. And then if let's say that you answer yes to one and no to the other, then you can probably rule that person out as not understanding what you're asking. And so you can look for consistency across multiple questions to establish whether or not the thing that you're testing for is actually the case. This is part of survey design that's used in sociology. Sociologists also know statistics, so they know what sample sizes are necessary for the hypotheses that they're forming.
I mean, I don't know how to win this debate. I just
educate yourself on the social sciences would be my idea. That'd be a good place to start.
I just feel like there's so many ways for them to like doctor the methodology and the statistics and everything. There's so much room for that.
There's room for people in any field, if they're a bad actor, to act badly. That's not special to the social sciences.
I feel like it's easier for the peers to review critically harder sciences. Or is that not the case?
Did you hear about the case? Did you hear about the superconductors, the room temperature superconductor claims a few years ago?
Yeah.
So one of the papers got published in like a top tier journal, if I remember correctly. It was caught by a Redditor. Because the data was fabricated, and peer review can't catch fabricated data, at least not always. And that's in a very hard science.
One case in
this is like a huge case. This is not like I'm sure that we could come up. I'm sure that we could come up with like 100 different cases. This was just one that made the news.
And if there are 100 different cases in the hard sciences, how many different cases can there be in soft sciences?
It seems like you're begging the question. You're assuming that the soft sciences have more fraud than the hard sciences do. But I don't know why I would think that.
Because it's easier to commit fraud.
Just because it's easier to commit fraud doesn't mean that there is more fraud. Also, it's not clear that it is easier to commit fraud.
I mean, how could it not be
Committing
clear?
fraud is pretty easy in the hard sciences. You just make up your data.
No, usually there are instruments that are recording data.
Yeah, and then you can change the data that you publish.
Well, and there would be changes seen in your hardware.
Peer review doesn't examine your hardware. They examine what you send them, which is the data, perhaps, right, and the manuscript. So it's easy to fake it.
I'm going to disagree. I mean, it's
which part?
With the part that there necessarily an equivalent or less amount of fraudulent data in the social sciences.
It sounds like you just don't have any reason to think this, though, right? I've explained to you how it's equally easy to fake your data in the hard sciences. You literally just change the numbers. Why is it so much easier that there'd be so many more frauds in the social sciences?
The way I see it is the more successful projects that come through any sort of science, the more likely they'll get more funding the next year. So if you have your peer reviews not rejecting,
I mean, that's sure, but that's true in all. That's true in all of the sciences.
Right. So why is it that in the harder sciences you'll get more rejections? If
I don't know if that's true.
I don't know if it's true either.
Let's just go look at the best journal in sociology. I'm just curious. The American Sociological Review. Rejection rate. American Sociological Review has an extremely low exception rate, often cited around between 6 to 8%. Now let's go look at the best journal in physics, which is Physical Review Letters. Physical Review Letters acceptance rate. Physical Review Letters typically has... Wait, no, that can't be true. That's way too high. Is that true? There's no way. Okay, the overall selectivity. So once it gets past the editor, there's an acceptance rate of around 30% in Physical Review Letters, but to get past the editor is a big hurdle. So I guess they have a full acceptance rate of about 7% for Physical Review Letters. Most of them won't even make it past the editor. For the American Sociological Review, it's between 6 and 8%, which is to say, the acceptance rate in the best journals in two different fields, one very soft, one very hard, is about the same.
Wouldn't you have to get the total numbers though? Like,
I was giving you percentages. Percentage is how you know how selective they are, right? If they're more selective, then they reject more. If they get 100, if they get 100 submissions and they reject 99 of them, then that's a 1% acceptance rate.
I agree.
And so, why do we need?
Never mind. You're right.
Okay.
So, I'm surprised, I guess. Well,
also, by the way, just checking this. This is actually exceedingly funny. I guess the American Sociological Review accepted 40 papers in 2024. You know how many papers the Physical Review Letter published in 2024?
Hundreds.
2,730.
Right. So it matters how many more are being offered to review.
Yeah, so PRL,
if
40 accepts about 7. So now we're going back
means...
to percentages. So PRL and
Right. So
ASR
tens
have
of
about the
thousands
same
of-
percentage, but PRL accepts way more absolutely.
Correct.
So the American Sociological Review, by both standards, is at least as selective as physical review letters.
The 40 papers in 1 year, it seems crazy that they'd only have that many
Well, keep in
entries.
mind, sociology gets way less funding. So there's way fewer sociologists than there are physicists. So there's going to be less people publishing research. It's really not that surprising.
I would think there'd be more, but
apparently not. The American Sociological Review is often ranked #1, and they published 40 last year. There's also the American Journal of Sociology that we can look into. It's one of the oldest and most prestigious, and so we can look at the acceptance rate there. Acceptance rate there was less than 10%. I guess 2024 they got 6.2% acceptance rate. Let's find out how many publications in 2024 they did. They published 140 papers in 2024. This is the American Journal of Sociology. So yeah, I mean, it's just the case that significantly fewer papers in sociology get published than in physics, and that's reasonable because there are way fewer sociologists than there are physicists.
I agree.
But they're just as selective.
Whether or not should rejected projects, should they have been funded, and how do we figure out how to shrink the number of?
Well, hold on. So there's something going on here that we have to be a little bit careful about. So just because a project is rejected from the best journal doesn't mean that it's not a good project. It just might mean that it doesn't cover the scope that they care about, or it doesn't, it's not as groundbreaking as they'd like it to be. Maybe it's only a minor step in a broader scientific project. And so sometimes these papers that get rejected from these places go on to be accepted at other journals that are just, not as prestigious. That's fairly common. I've had 2 papers rejected from PRL that ended up getting published elsewhere in pretty good journals, just not like the top journal. Secondly, it's not clear that these projects, one project does not correspond to one paper often. Often one project is multiple papers. Furthermore, it's not clear that these projects, or the papers that these projects come from, the projects that these papers come from, have anything to do with the NSF. So the only reason why we investigated the acceptance rate of these journals is because you made the claim that sociological journals, sociological research journals, are less selective than physics journals are. Their peer review is less rigorous. And we've now demonstrated that that's not the case. So I still don't understand the motivation for thinking that sociology is somehow less rigorous, is somehow more prone to fraud than the harder sciences.
Okay. I'll have changed my mind from your demonstration.
All right, we got there. Killing time. I'm going to let you go, but thanks for being here, bud.
Rock and roll.
Take care.
See you, bud.
Did we get 2 wins today? We never get 2 wins in one day. Hell yeah. The good, I mean, it was like pulling teeth, but we got there, and he seems like he was willing to change his mind. So cool. From Atheist in a Foxhole with the $10. First caller, if a rich person funds the research, your ilk will just create a conspiracy about that person. There's no winning. These people need to shut up and go pay for that ballroom. Why would we want private companies that have financial interest to pay for things when instead we could have the government, which, the government's not perfect, but at least the government doesn't have private financial interest. It has public financial interest, apparently. Why would we want private companies to fund this? I'm from Literally Lou with the $5 Australian. Appreciate you. I appreciate you back. Thank you for being here, Lou. And from Pensive with the $20, thanks for being you, Doctor. Well, thank you for being you. Thank you for being so generous. It's very, very kind. From Adam Hurst with the $20, Blitz, you have way more patience than me. These guys have been insufferable. Sometimes you can get through to them, which makes it worth it. From Sayanology with the $2, dude, you have amazing hair. I'm a lesbian, Mrs. Blitz. Fair. I appreciate that. I do appreciate that. I think that's all we have for today. So I just want to remind you, oh, we did get a super chat. We got a super chat from Rob for thanks for covering this tough topic. Well, I appreciate it. It's always good to do. It's always a good topic to do. I feel like that, you know, look, I know that I'm not making normative claims, but people want to believe in science. People want, at least the people that we can even reach, the people that we have hope of reaching, these are the people who want to be pro-science, right? So I think it's actually super worthwhile. I think this is a worthwhile thing to do. Now, before we end the live stream, just a few quick shillings that need to be done. First, if you haven't already, and I like to pull it up because it's just so beautiful to look at, make sure to go to my website. It's really easy to get there. You just type in my name with a dot in the middle, and you can find my website. It's literally type in blitz.phd, no .com, just blitz.phd. And here's my website. There's like an about section. There's like, you know, you can even see my research now. You can see like the science communication stuff that I do, you know, all the debate stuff that I do. And there's a whole bunch of links at the top right. Whole bunch of links up here for, like, if you want to follow me on TikTok or on YouTube or on Instagram, or if you want to join the Discord server, you can see all of those there. And if you want to support me, there's a way to do it here. You can do like Patreon or Cash App, or you can buy me a coffee, whatever it is. You can also become a member on YouTube. That's a good way to support me because then you get some perks too. And it's only like $4 or $5 a month, and it gives me some consistency. So that's very much appreciated. The other thing is that there's a contact me. If you go to get in touch, there's a way to contact me. Now, please don't abuse this. There's a few different things that you might want to contact me for. Maybe you want me to go speak at your whatever. Okay. Contact me. Or maybe you want to do a research collaboration and you are a physicist. If you're a physicist and you want to do a research collaboration with me, you can email me or send this form. So check it out if you're interested. There's a whole bunch of stuff there. You can read about what I do. And I'll see you guys tomorrow for some more debate stuff.